I get burned all the time, that's why. That's like, that's it.
We're live on Zoom. Whenever you're ready, Chair.
Testing.
I don't think you need to use the microphones. I think it just picks us up on this owl here. Do we get a thumbs up, Christine? Can you hear us okay? Yeah, okay, cool.
Okay. Calling the meeting to order, I'm going to turn it over to our state climate change coordinator, Leah Laramie, to give you some hybrid meeting instructions. Thank you, Leah.
Mahalo, Co-Chair Evans. Mahalo everyone for joining us today. We are in a new setting, so if anyone online cannot hear us, please let us know. We're all focusing on one microphone, so we'll try to speak loudly. As always, if you are online, please keep yourself muted unless speaking. And we ask all commission members to keep your cameras on for the duration of the meeting, especially when voting is in process. And here, one for happening. Okay.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome and thank you all. I'm going to do the roll call, and that will serve as a roll call vote if there are no objections to any motions that arise from the meeting. Co-chair Chang. Present. Senator Gabbard or representative from his
Aloha,
office.
present.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Wooten. Representative Ichiyama, is there a representative from her?
Wants me to be in any minute.
Okay, excused for now. A representative from the Hawaii Tourism Authority. Excused. Representative from the Department of Agriculture.
Here, Sharon.
Oh, thank you very much, Sharon. The monitor is a little bit small at the moment, so I couldn't see your picture, but thank you so much for attending. And then is the we have the new CEO for OHA or a representative? Does she know how friend is building? I think she does. Excuse for now. And for DHHL. Thank you, Vice Deputy Director. And for DOT, here. Thank you, Director. For Department of Health.
Hi, this is Marianne Rossio for Department of Health. Dinah Felton will also be coming a little later.
Thank you very much, Marianne. For Department of Education.
Here, on behalf of Deputy Director.
Oh, thank you.
Jeremy.
And your name?
Jeremy Kolke.
Oh, yes, thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate that. And for the City and County of Honolulu, Department of Planning and Permitting. For Maui County Department of Planning. Used for now. And for the Department of Planning for the County of Hawaii.
Aloha, Chair.
Hi, April. And for the Department of Planning, County of Kauai.
Present. Sorry with the lateness.
Perfect timing. For the Adjutant General, is there a representative? Not seeing that.
I think they said they're gonna send somebody, but, sorry, Joshua Cooper said he was on for Maui County. I'm not seeing.
Okay, for now.
Oh.
And, for the, manager of the Coastal Zone Management Program.
Present.
Welcome, Justine. Okay, and for representing the Director of the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism is Mark Glick.
Actually, Monique Schaefer.
Monique, welcome, thank
Hi, Monique Schaefer here, present.
Yeah.
Aloha.
Okay, thank you very much. We have guests, I believe. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to go around the room first and have people introduce themselves, starting with Amy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Amy works at Hawai'i Sea Grant with Office of Conservation and Coastal Lands.
Hello, everyone. Uji Butler. I'm the new manager of Adaptation. Delighted to meet you all.
Thank you. Terrific.
Aloha, everyone. I'm not sure where the camera is. Hey, Michael Cade, Administrator, Office of Conservation and Coastal Lands, and here as an observer.
Thank you very much.
I'm Julie Stillman, Deputy Comptroller.
Thank you, Muley. And moving over to our Zoom monitor, is there anyone who hasn't been called in the roll call who is attending by Zoom, that if you would introduce yourselves, we'd be very delighted.
Cindy.
Do you see anyone?
Yeah, Cindy, go ahead.
Okay.
Cindy, our deputy agent.
Oh, we couldn't hear you, Cindy.
Oh, okay. Welcome, Cindy.
Hi, everyone. Cindy Young, Deputy AG. I'll need to apologize in advance and excuse myself at 2:30 from the meeting. I have a previously scheduled appointment.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you for the heads up on that. Okay, we're going to move to our first agenda item, and that is approval of the minutes of August 10th, 2023. Members, you received the draft minutes in your meeting packet that Leah circulated last week. Has everybody had a chance to take a look? Do I hear any,
Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes of August 10, 2023.
thank you, co-chair. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? Hearing none, the minutes are adopted unanimously. And we'll move on to our next agenda item 3, the annual report to the legislature. For those who may not have seen the draft, here it is. Thank you very much, Leah. And
Joe.
thank you, Joe. And we have a presentation on that.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so Joe will walk us through just a high-level overview of our annual report. Hopefully, you folks had a chance to read it. Joe made it very beautiful for us all, unlike other years. So are you ready, Joe? Take it away.
Okay, can everyone over the Zoom?
You can mute yourself.
Sorry about that. Can everyone hear me over the Zoom?
Yeah, okay.
Just wanted to give a short overview of the report. So for those of you who maybe haven't done it yet, this is our annual report for the Climate Commission for the year from these reports is just to give an overview of the commission progress throughout each year. It is mandated by Act 32 that the Climate Commission every 5 years we're required to submit a more detailed report. The 5-year report was last year, so this is regular reporting years. The report shows their progress. It also helps to inform legislation on what the Climate Commission does, advocate for some of maybe climate actions across the state really show where the needs are, and what's going on statewide. The report's divided into a couple of sections. It goes through all of the current commission members. It overviews the commission's mission and priority statements with the inclusion of recently added statements. Culture's message is a section in here as well. There's a section on authorizationalizing climate ready Hawaii. That's divided into our funding. We have a section on resilience. We have a section on policy, and we have a section on climate action. That's divided into both projects we worked on for climate change mitigation and adaptation. We also have a section devoted to community engagement, because that's an area the Climate Commission has tried to expand on this year. In the section on our high impact actions, there's 4 specific ones that were recently adopted this past year that brings the total to 19 total actions. These 4 were agreed on by the governor and by HSCO. They include exploring the adoption of building performance standards, the adoption of PEP standards, taking actions to align building sector utility resource planning and permit procedures with state climate goals, and joining the U.S. Department of Energy's Better Climate Challenge. Some of the highlights this year in terms of advancing our climate ready. One major highlight has been starting the process of applying for climate pollution reduction grant funding through the Inflation Reduction Act with EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. This funding will be able to, this funding I'm having a hard time seeing the ice cream. I apologize for that. CPRG and statewide mitigation and decarbonization projects. Additionally, we had our VISTA cohort continue this year. We had 8 vistas serving the goals of state and county offices working on climate change projects, including projects that help to build the capacity of the Climate Commission quite a bit. Another highlight has been our annual conference. Of course, it began in 2023, which involved a lot of partnerships, a lot of current research, youth advocacy, different summits, 20th anniversary Clean Energy Summit. So that was a highlight, which brought a lot of state entities together. Equity has been a focus for the Climate Commission this year. One area we worked on quite a bit is accurate representation in federal data sets. With the Justice for the initiative, identifying those communities who need help the most will be important. We've been working on bringing attention to the federal data sets that can use more accurate representation, as well as creating a more local database for local data that can be accessible for local decision making. Funded in personnel to create that. Our America Vista cohort has also completed many projects related to equity. These have been both outreach and inclusion of community members in state and county climate action planning. Urban forestry has been a piece as well with One Vista, creating the Green Blue Urban Hui, automating efforts for communities that maybe don't have extensive tree canopy covers. Vistas have also done work to connect community members to resources that aid with climate action, such as the electric bike and mobile rebate, and clean energy assistance, and incentive programs that involve people save money on utility bills, as well as clean energy and water. Mitigation and adaptation projects have touched on both sea level rise and equity. We've had 5 new positions approved to help with our efforts through the CPRG grant. These positions will focus on data, they'll focus on community outreach, they'll focus on research. That'll help a lot in building climate commission's capacity. The multi-mobility hub project is also an ongoing project through the Department of Transportation, as well as one of our vistas. The purpose of that is to seamlessly connect clean alternative modes of transportation, So we've been working to identify potential locations for this mobile house by inventory and safe parking. So we're completing
Hello?
that. We
You talk.
also- There's also an ongoing project having to do with the restoration of Puma Lagoon Beach Park. It's a pilot project to explore nature-based solutions to address sea level rise. Puma Lagoon Beach is a location you think through the pilot where erosion is threatening both the beach and the highway. We are nearing implementation stage of that. So depending on how that goes, it could potentially be a great model for years between how we navigate the environments. Community engagement has also been a focus this year for the commission. Now that a lot of the risk from COVID-19 has been reduced, we've been able to do a lot more in-person engagement along with online engagement. Online, we have a social media presence that's grown this year, newsletters, things posted on our website. A highlight this year was hosting our first ever series of community climate fairs across 2 islands. We had one on Oahu, one on Big Island, but it brought together over 70 organizations and 300 individuals, share information and resources on climate change, and have a fun way for community members to get to know who's representing them and know how to get involved in discussions that impact them and how they navigate climate change in their own lives. So with that, I'll open it up to discussion, both for Leah and I, if anyone has questions about the report or any other relevant work that we heard.
Members, any questions for our presenter on the annual report? Did we leave anything out that you think is important to include in the annual report? Go ahead, Ed.
Sorry, Chair. So the question. So when we report to the legislature, what are we reporting based on? Just on actions, or are we targeting something? We have our 2030 community goals and 2045 goals. So are we reporting how these are getting us to those goals and what percentage we're getting there on?
Good point. We are charged in our law with reporting back to the ledge on sea level rise. It's part of the law, and so we do a special report on that, and it's different from the annual report on the commission. This report could serve several purposes, and you pointed out one, which is looking at the laws that the legislature has passed, setting deadlines for targets for renewable energy, for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, a number of areas that are needed for mitigation of climate change. This report does not do that. That would be probably we would either look at the various departmental dashboards for the target areas that they have some role in, and somehow try to pull them together. And the counties, of course, also have dashboards on their climate change stuff. So it's a good idea. We don't have that in this.
Got it. And Chair, I think that's my point.
Yeah.
There's information all over the place.
Yeah.
There's different targets all over the place. Would be good as this group is supposed to be the convening body to get that data in one spot. So we know our roles, our goals, and our targets for, especially with 2030 coming up in 5.5 years.
Yeah. I agree.
No, I agree. And mahalo, Ed, for raising that. I mean, I think, now that I've had 10 months sitting here, we know that climate mitigation and adaptation, I mean, this is a crisis that we're in, but I agree that the role of we're really an advisory body, but we should be putting together collectively, what is everybody doing in one unified place, one that helps the legislature as well as helps the public. So I think that, Leah, that probably would be a good idea, Joe and Leah, that we would, prior to the legislature, let's look at, can we coordinate all of our members that are, that have a seat on the commission, ask them to provide us updates on what they're doing to meet these goals. I would also like to see, I think what would be helpful to, what's looking forward? I mean, we've got a lot of things in here about what we've done, but perhaps looking forward, how are the respective agencies not only providing us an update on what they are doing, but what are they proposing to do, so that both the legislature as well as the public has an idea. And perhaps there's some real good synergy in what individual agencies are doing, so that collectively we are in better coordination. Because what I've come to realize with the Lahaina fires, there's just not enough resources to go around. The more that we're collectively working together, the better. So yeah,
So
mahalo for the suggestion.
And considering the line of fires, I would assume, and I'm not gonna speak for legislature, of course, but I would assume a lot of the resources will be going towards those types of efforts this year. So having a clear definition of what our roles and our goals are specifically would be important. I would assume.
Representative Luciano.
No, I think that point about having metrics and how we're doing and all the goals is really helpful. Aloha Plus Challenge has their dashboard. That's a great resource. You know, I don't want to duplicate efforts, right? Maybe we could just link to that in our report somewhere, like here's how we're doing on reaching the 2030 goal, the 2035 goal, right? And their website, if you go through it, they tell us where we're doing great and where we're doing not so great, right? So I think maybe that's something that we could incorporate as another tool. I just don't want to remake everybody do the same work, but I did have one clarifying question on the report.
Yeah.
So on the front, it's annual report 2022. Is it for FY?
No, that's just a typo.
Oh, yeah. So it should say 2020, right, 3.
Yeah,
Got it. Big typo. Okay, thank you.
my apologies. And then I do know that the Hawaii State Energy Office has some metrics on the renewable energy for electric generation, because they're charged with tracking that. Monique, do you have any, you want to explain what you've got for that one?
We also
Sure.
have a.
Yeah.
I can
So-
go ahead and answer
Go
that.
ahead, Monique.
Yes, so we do, we are required to track, to record and track the renewable portfolio standard, which is now based on generation. In addition, we have been tasked with identifying the pathways for our greenhouse gas reduction goals, but that ultimately, the tracking of that falls to the Department of Health. They do the inventory. So just want to clarify.
Thanks, Monique. And then Representative Bowen.
Similarly, I think that tracking is happening both through the energy office and the utility. And I would say with the Aloha Plus Challenge dashboard, it's not always totally up to date. So they're getting information. I mean, if departments have goals they have to meet, you should be the primary source of understanding how far you are in meeting their goals, right? So maybe we should figure out how to better coordinate so that we can make, if we want to use the Aloha Plus Challenge dashboard as a resource to kind of coordinate and make that more of an official repository. So right now it's kind of doing its own thing. Yeah.
Good point, good point. Other points?
Justine, did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
I did. I think it might have been implied, but I didn't hear specifically whether or not it would be included is if we're talking about where we are in terms of meeting certain goals and where the kind of what we're moving towards, if there's an opportunity to provide the needs, which is something that I think needs to be communicated in order to meet those goals. And I think that might be a good place to comprehensively look at where we need to make decisions and investments, and where we can source, other funding opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Justine. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, I'd actually like our, this, the report that we put together to sort of be reflective, as Representative Lowen said, of the state and getting input from all of the agencies. that I think it would be helpful for legislators to know where our gaps are. What areas are we not missing? So the metrics is really helpful to help us evaluate, but it also gives the public a really good idea of where we are and where each agency is. And so, yeah, I think if we could maybe, Leah, reaching out to all of our members to provide a summary report of what they're doing and how they're doing.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll look back to the minutes of the previous meetings and work from that and provide drafts and share it with the different departments to review and add to, so they're not working from scratch. Because they've all provided great updates throughout the year on the different activities that they've been doing.
Perfect. My question though, updates on activities, but is it measuring where we're supposed to be at in 2030? That goal and measuring the improvements that we got. I don't know what that means, it's like.
I was just gonna say, I think it's a great idea, and I think that, yeah, linking it to our current resources is great, and I would love to make it more robust and more up to date and make sure that we have it very clearly presented. I don't know how much we'll get done before this is due, but I think for future
Yeah,
reports, I think that's an amazing
Yeah,
idea.
and I should say, I'm not asking for all that to be added now. This is quite a late date for me to ask something like that, but just for future.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea.
But I wouldn't mind seeing some updates. And I think, so that is more reflective as we move forward to the legislature, this coming legislative session,
Yeah.
And also just like remembering that the commission was formed to just help everyone make sure we're all taking each other. And, if we want to expand that, we can probably use more resources to do it.
And I think we should, because just from my perspective, when I look for reports on GC emissions or reductions or production, there's like 50 of them. I would love to see which one the commission, this group, is saying is the right one. There's a
Well, what's
lot
your
of
question
different.
specifically? What's your question?
What's
actually?
the goal and what's my part of it? That's my question. And I'd love to be able to see that for all of the agencies. Because quite frankly, for transportation, there's ground, there's air, there's military.
Yeah,
So military, I don't control. So who in this group is talking to the military about their reduction?
yeah.
We talk to them about stuff that we can work with them on at the Navy and at the Air Force, but they have other stuff.
Yeah, I think we're probably like a little off topic, but I think what Monique is working on with the decarbonization, like that comprehensive study, that will help inform it. And realistically, there's probably like never gonna be a totally cut and dried answer for
Totally agree.
anyone.
But at
So,
least if we get some kind of target, then I feel better about 5.5 years from now.
yeah,
Without that target, I don't know what.
some more short-term target that you
Yeah,
can work
exactly.
towards.
Yeah.
And that's what we asked for in the report. The legislation
Yeah.
specifically asked for, what are the short-term, what are the short-term most impactful actions we can take, what is longer term out, so that we have some of those action items, hopefully. We'll see.
Okay, any other thoughts or comments, members of the public?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay, members of the public, any comments? I see Senator Gabbard there. Did you want to comment, Senator?
And Monique has her hand up.
Oh, okay, Monique, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to address, thank you. I just want to address some of the points made by both Ed as Director Stimpin as well as Representative Lowen. Those are definitely metrics that we are looking at in the report, the decarbonization report under Act 238. And I think we will have recommendations forthcoming on some of the metrics that we need to be tracking, not just greenhouse gas reduction, but the things that feed into greenhouse gas reduction beyond the electric sector, which right now is really the only metric that we're tracking as far as, how far the renewable portfolio standard is going. So I would recommend looking to the decarbonization report when published for some of the metrics that need to be reported out and tracked.
Monique, when will it be published?
It is due to the legislature 20 days before the start of the legislative session, so it will be published then. So
Thank you.
December 27th.
You got it down to the day. All right. Okay. Any other members of the public? Anybody wants to any comments? Anybody on Zoom? Senator, circling them back around to you, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to add?
No, I just think that, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, the points that were brought up by Ed and Don, I'm hearing from constituents that, it is a crisis, as Don is saying, but they're not getting any feedback. What's government doing about it? So we need to pull it all together and what we're doing and what our plans are for the future, just yeah. So yeah, great idea.
Thank you very much, Senator. Okay, seeing no other comments.
Joshua.
Go ahead.
Joshua from Maui. Just wanted to also echo what people were sharing. We're definitely in a climate crisis, speaking here from Maui and everything that happened with the wildfires. And I think what we can look at is see in a way how we've done things with the voluntary local review, but look at the locally determined contributions and follow the Paris Agreement. But more importantly, I think a local action plan that we look at what each county can do. And as a state, like you said, if we combine our efforts, I think that's important, as Senator Gabbard is saying, that people want to know what they can do individually, but then also collectively what we're doing together to address this climate crisis. Mahalo.
Thank you, Josh. Several counties do have climate action plans, and that, and some of them drill down, in far more detail than we have so far in our report for their specific county. Okay, if there are no other comments or thoughts, do we want to?
Yeah, this is an action item, but so Leah, are you looking at updating this? Do you want us to act upon this now, subject to updates by staff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just nice to get approval for it, so that, but I think, so either however you folks want to do it, we're gonna have to turn it in at some point. We'll definitely send it out to folks and get your comments beforehand. So I'm happy for us to not take action on this or take action subject.
I would suspect it's probably a good idea if the climate commission, if the commission does take an action to support and at least, affirm that, and what our comments are, but it probably is a good idea. So it's more than just staff submitting this, but yeah.
Okay, that sounds great.
Co-chair, is that a motion?
Yeah, that's a motion. There you go. There you go.
Okay, is there a second?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Are there any objections to the motion as stated by Co-Chair Chang? Okay, so hearing none, the annual report with updates that have been discussed will move forward. Thank you. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is item 4.
Chair, before we start, can I just note, I mean, we've heard from them in the room, but just to recognize that that Chair Fujiyama and Commissioner Cooper have also joined. We also have Commissioner Ueo representing the Adjunct General here as well.
Oh, great.
So we got almost a full house, which is great.
That's
Thanks everyone for being
wonderful.
here.
Thank you. Okay. So moving on to item 4, Leah, do we have someone who's going to make that report?
Yep, we have James McCallan from the Department of Health here to present the report to the legislature on climate and health.
Okay, welcome, James.
Great, yeah, thank you so much. Let me share my screen really quickly. All right, can you guys see that graphic?
It pops out.
It's not clear?
No, it's great. I was just commenting on it's I love the color.
Oh, thank you. Okay, yeah, so thank you so much. So I'm filling in for Dr. Diana Felton, who should be joining a little later today. This draft report to the legislature is a more formal update to the one I gave at the last commission meeting about DOH's climate change and health program. But just as a refresher, last legislative session, House Concurrent Resolution 192 and House Resolution 197 passed and urged the Climate Commission to develop a proactive and comprehensive strategy to educate Hawaii's residents about the human health impacts of the climate crisis. The resolution also requested that the Commission submit a progress report to the legislature before the 2024 session, which is the report we're talking about today. The report is really brief. It's just about 2 pages, but I can summarize. Before May of this year, DOH did not have a dedicated climate and health program. And so building this program is the first step before a communication strategy can be implemented. We have a very unique geography and climate, and so we first need to understand fully the health impacts of that. So in mid-May, I was brought on to DOH as the acting climate change and health coordinator. And alongside Diana Felton, we've started some really great projects to build this program and ultimately get us to the communication strategy. There are more details in the report, but the projects include, we launched the updated climate and health program web portal. There are a lot of resources on there, and it currently serves as a piece of this requested education strategy, since it's already available to the public now and it's frequently updated as our projects advanced. We also launched a climate change and health working group, which is an extended network of members within DOH, JABSOM, students and faculty, UH, members from the State Energy Office and other organizations. We've got about 70 members, and it meets every month, and there's a lot of momentum right now in this group. The DOH program is following CDC frameworks on how to develop a climate and health program. So essentially, this framework has stepwise guidelines to analyze current health impacts and then use climate models to project future burdens of disease for Hawaii as temperatures and environmental conditions change, to ultimately provide evidence for future policy and program interventions to strengthen our public health system. So right now we're in the process of that first step, which is to understand the state's current climate and health vulnerabilities. And so everything really that you see on this graphic, from extreme heat to vector disease to drought, mental illness, which includes it all, really everything here is part of that assessment. And right now we recently received some data of hospital visits related to extreme heat over the past 2 years. And within the next few weeks, we're working to match those patient visits with the temperature and wet bulb conditions of the days to see if there are any heat-related trends connected to those visits. And the plan is to release that data as an internal state report as soon as possible, really. So those are really just a bit of snapshots of the projects in this report. We have some more coming in the pipeline. I also wanted to note that this report to the legislature does not include any additional requests of the legislature for the climate and health program for this session. But given the magnitude of the human health impacts related to the climate crisis, the DOH climate and health program will very likely be requesting additional personnel or funding to support both the program and this requested education strategy, either in the 2025 session or future sessions. So thank you so much. I'm available if there are any questions.
Thank you, James. Questions from the members?
So James, this is co-chair Don Shang with DLNR. Thank you so much for the overview. Are you, this year are you developing the framework for this educational program, or do you, and because you mentioned that you had some trends and you were going to do an internal report. At what point did you take this out externally to the general public?
Yeah, so, oh, sorry.
No, I'm sorry, go on.
Sorry. Yeah, so really to get to the communication strategy, we really needed to develop the content to present. So that's really what's been the past few months' priority of the program, is to really just develop the story to then tell to the public. But like as projects move forward, like we have the web portal and this heat data report, when that's finished, we'll try to get that out as soon as possible. So we will like concurrently try to communicate this out to the public as much as we can before an official like stepwise communication strategy is developed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, amazing amount of work for 6 months, James. And needed as well, speaking to needs. Any other comments from the members?
This question.
Yes.
It's kind of related to the question I had before, but for showing this to the public and sending out is a good thing to make sure they understand what we're trying to get done. Yeah. But is there, so we're talking about our 2030 clean energy goals. Yeah. Is there things to look forward to in 2030 when we hit our goals that make things better from this perspective? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
trying to make it relevant to the general public, right?
You are.
This is why we're trying to do this. So
Yeah.
what can we tell them when we hit our goals? This is what you can afford.
James, did you hear, Director Snippen's comment?
Yeah, but, I mean, I think that's kind of part of developing this communication strategy. If we want to align it with goals, I think where we're at right now is that it was very clear that within DOH, there hadn't been enough, like intentional time spent at looking at the health impacts of the climate crisis. There's been great progress of, like, on clean energy and sea level rise. And so I think a lot of work is needed to be done to really like match those with goals and communicate to the public so they recognize the health impacts of the climate crisis and why it's important to their health.
Thank you, James. Kaina, you raised your eyebrows. Would you like to?
Oh, no, no,
expand
no.
on that?
No, no, no.
A new signal. Keep your eyes.
We have a hand raised on Zoom.
Okay, go ahead, whoever that was.
Noel.
Hi, I had a question. This is great. This looks really, really helpful for planning purposes. And on that note, I wanted to suggest that, so I see chemical contamination as part of water quality impacts. And I'm wondering if the state has any guidance for if the water table is rising in areas where that may be, you know, capped and filled from previous industrial use or that sort of thing, if there's going to be any guidance or analysis, impact analysis on those areas. And I'm from the planning department, so that's why I'm asking, would be very helpful. Thank you.
James, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'll drop a link in the chat right out when I have my screen of the web portal we set up. There is resources. A couple years ago, someone within DOH took a look at different like chemical contamination sites, and they matched it with mapping of sea level rise projections, and were able to highlight like possible areas for concern for future climate related contamination. More work's needed to be done on that, really, to complete this full assessment, but definitely.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. I'd love to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Any other further comments on this report?
Don't see any more hands raised. Just FYI, folks, you won't be able to chat with each other for sunshine, but we will send out that link that James was talking about. It'll be in our minutes, and also we'll send it out to all the commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay, this is an action item. I'll entertain a motion to accept the report. Is there a member that would like to? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Are there any comments on the motion? If not, are there any objections to the motion? Hearing and seeing no objections, the report is accepted, and we'll move on to our next agenda item. This is agenda item 5, establishing a permitted interaction group pursuant to HRS section 92-2.5 for the creation of a work plan for the Hawaii Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Commission. This is my request of the commission, is to approve a permitted interaction group that would take the time between now and our next meeting to develop a work plan. And of course, a permitted interaction group must have a clear charge. So I will recommend that the group review the past work of the Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Commission in relation to the mandates of the various laws that have been passed with targets to either mitigate or adapt to climate change. And then second, to identify gap areas and needs for urgent climate change actions, including obviously wildfire prevention. Thank you, Representative Ichiyama, for your very helpful working group report. I think you probably all had an opportunity to look at this. and also Representative Lowen for yours on the environment. Those are ones that would inform this group as well. And then identify lead and support agencies for areas of work that are now gaps that need to be filled. And report back to the Climate Change Commission with a draft work plan for its consideration in spring 24 to shape the work of members during FY 2025, starting July 1st. Is there such a motion? I'll entertain that as a motion. Okay, members. Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Comments or questions from the members?
That's Cindy.
So,
Sorry.
hi,
I did neglect to talk about who the members would be. Just in case our Attorney General noted that absence.
So just as a reminder, the members, so it would be between 2 and a quorum, or I'm sorry, 2 and less than a quorum.
Yes.
And it would have, and the motion should include the scope of each member's, what they're gonna do on, as a permitted interaction group member.
Thank you very much. I am suggesting that the members, so we have our quorum is 11. And so the permitted interaction group could be as many as 10, but my recommendation is less than that because that's a very large number of folks. So I'm suggesting that the state agencies members be the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, the Department of Land and Natural Resources, the Department of Health, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Homelands. I'm recommending that we have a volunteer from the counties. Kaina, would you be willing to? Get your eyebrows down, bro.
Being that neither Dawn I think it's usually the absent director. I could definitely.
Thank you very much. I know you've done a lot of work on this, so your participation will be extremely helpful. And then I believe we should have representatives from the House and the Senate on this because there's been a lot of work that's been done. Representative Lowen, would you be willing to serve?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And from the Senate, Senator Gabbard, are you willing to serve on the permitted interaction? Thank you very much. Okay, Cindy, have we fulfilled the legal requirements for establishing the scope of the members? Okay, I would suggest that the members only act within the scope of an advisory committee and their own role in the operations of their department. Does that satisfy what you would define as scope?
That's correct. I mean, I think generally what I'm gathering is that each of the members would be tasked with working on coming, collectively and each of them having a part of this work plan. I think what you're saying is kind of each within kind of the scope, the county would kind of come from the county perspective, et cetera, and then come up with a work plan and collectively present it to the Climate Change Commission at its next meeting. And just as another reminder, this would be a 3-meeting arc. So the next meeting, at a subsequent meeting, right, the permitted interaction group could only really report to the body, to the commission, and there couldn't be deliberation. It would really only be the reporting back, and then at the subsequent meeting to that, the 3rd meeting, it would be the deliberation and decision making on that recommendation.
Thank you very much. The 3-meeting rule. Yeah. Okay. Any comments, questions from members first?
There.
Yes.
So what about the entities that aren't named that may or may not be working towards climate mitigation or adaptation actions? If the members are only supposed to speak within the scopes of their own agency's responsibilities, it seems like a very difficult thing to do. I assume it would be maybe captured in the next annual report based on the recommendations of discussion today, but I think there are some key entities that probably are doing things that also should be included, but I certainly wouldn't feel like we should obligate others either.
Well, I totally agree. In fact, all the members of the commission, all 20 of us, have a role, and beyond the commission. Somebody know that UH is not a member, and you've done an amazing amount on climate change. No, I think that might be covered, Justine, under the members of the permitted interaction group acting as an advisory body to recommend to the full commission a work plan. So I think that could go beyond just what their own department is doing, or their own entity. I certainly think that it should be broader than just the members in terms of because there are gaps and work and needs that we haven't worked on yet, and that we need to be working on. Anyone else want to help me with that?
Yeah, so is it my understanding, because I appreciate the taking the initiative and the intensive, as I understand, you are proposing that before the next meeting, this group come up with a work plan to identify what we've done, and what we need to do, and where there may be gaps. So we're creating more of a framework for the work plan. I mean, what are you envisioning?
Looking at what we've done would be, that would not be the primary focus.
Okay.
It's looking at the gaps, the need
Okay.
areas, the urgent need areas that haven't been a primary focus of the commission. We've been in existence for 10 years, since 2014. We got reformed in 2017 by Act 32. The legislature directed us to look at sea level rise in the statute. And with our partnership with UH, we've done an amazing amount of work on sea level rise and with the counties. And we've worked on other issues like transportation emissions and equity. But, we're looking at climate change impacting us in so many other ways: wildfires, droughts, heat stress for human health. That I think those are the areas we probably would want to focus on rather than what we've done.
It sounds a lot, almost like where we started off with what Ed was asking, metrics between, I mean, I guess for me, and I don't have the benefit of the history of many of you who have sat on this as just but trying to understand, I mean, for me to know what the gaps are, I got to kind of understand. So what's our mandate? What have we done? And then, identifying where those gaps may be to figure out what we need to focus on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. I think I get it.
Any comments from the public? Any non-members that would like to add a comment or? Okay, Delaney, do you see any?
No, I think we're very okay. No, we're all good.
Okay. So are there any objections to the motion? Okay, if not, the motion is approved unanimously, and thank you, members, and we'll move on to our next agenda item.
So just as a technical, who's going to convene this group?
I will.
Oh, excellent.
Could I just make a comment that if the purpose of the group is to identify gaps, that at least some sort of survey or questionnaire is given to the entities that aren't participating in the group. Otherwise, I don't know how successful it will be.
Great suggestion. Thank you very much. Okay, we're on to, item number 6, commission member updates on climate change initiatives. So would anyone like to volunteer to start? Yeah, we'll go ahead and,
I'd like to go first.
go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got to take off for a 2:00 Zoom meeting, but I just wanted to mention the day before yesterday, we had our annual Senate retreat, where each of us were asked to give our top 3 legislative priorities. And it's a work in progress. Obviously, what's happened on Maui was at the front and center. And so nothing's been finalized, and we're still sifting through the input from all the stakeholders. So I'll report back to the group when we finalize things. And at this time, I'd also like to introduce Carlton Saito. He's going to be my new committee clerk. He's not officially on board until January 2nd, but he'll be taking notes for the rest of the meeting. So nice to see you all. Mahalo.
Thank you, Senator. Is there anyone else who needs to leave immediately? If not, maybe why don't we have other legislators? Representative Owen, would you like to go next?
Sure. I mean, as the chair of the Committee on Energy and Environmental Protection, I think I'm just continuing to work on a lot of the same things we've been working on, which includes, you know, looking at our energy system, energy efficiency, electrification, transportation, things that help with our decarbonization efforts and working towards that 2045 goal. And then, you know, broadly environmental issues, which are all linked into climate change also in other ways. And there's a lot of overlap between my committee and other committees. So I think I don't have real specifics right now, or if I started to try to go there, it'd be a long laundry list. But yeah, maybe we'll have more specific updates as we get closer to session.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Representative Ichion.
I don't have anything specific to share. I would just add on to what Chair Lowen mentioned, you know, just looking broadly at all of the issues affecting climate change. I think where the Committee on Water and Land comes in is more of a reaction to climate change, right? And all of the impacts of climate change. And then also emergency management falls in the committee. So right, disaster response, looking at it from that perspective. I would add that Chair Sean Quinlan has been working on implementation of the app for all of our, you know, permits and fees and licenses, to put that all in one place. And the hope is that that can be the infrastructure for some type of future constitutional climate change, green fee, whatever you want to call it. But he shared with me that he's been working very closely with DPS and how to create one app for everything, to really make it a smooth visitor experience, seamless from county to state, right? You cross from one beach park to the other, should all be on one platform. So optimistic on that. That's part of our majority caucus package from last year. We appropriated $1 million.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Why don't we move on to the counties now? Kainer, do you want to go first?
Sure. For Kauai, obviously we're eyeballs deep on our climate adaptation plan update. And we just finished last month all of our community interface. So we did the round robin of just open houses, bare statistics and data provided, and just, you know, throw at us what you got, what's all the concerns, what's all the issues. And then from that, we're able to synthesize all that information and community input into different chunks that we could set up in person or in-depth workshops around those various areas, whether they be hazard response, as well as climate mitigation policies and proposals. So we just finished up all those workshops and are now in the drafting stage. So we've got about 3 months of drafting, to which we then go back to the community with that first draft. And we do love to hear cheers and support, but we're really there to hear the criticisms and what we got wrong and where do we need to adjust. So we're there. A small brief update. I know I made a few controversial statements about our climate adaptation plan and the interests around managed retreat, particularly as it delves with property rights and how we're going to approach it. I can say that, you know, Kauai has set aside lands for discussions with communities about land swaps for coastal retreat. As much as that plays out at a 50,000-foot platform level, as we got into the details with these coastal owners and a program that we could spin up with lands again that have been designated specifically to approach and see what you can iron out. The idea of setting up infrastructured lots available for a voluntary land swap with coastal property owners that could just sit there vacant after all the infrastructure, because they're not going to swap it out for a piece of land that they can't use. It's going to have to be watered, sewered, have roads and all that access. Yeah. The idea of having those lands available, if a coastal property owner wants it in the middle of a housing crisis, isn't really going to pan out. So while that idea is still on our radar, the implementation of it right now is probably not going to go anywhere. And we'll be discussing that in our draft climate adaptation plan when we come out with it. And then the other one, as far as transfer of development rights and the use of what are very lucrative agricultural lots and their respective densities. We did approach the communities with that discussion. In some areas, you know, mixed reviews. What we were kind of shocked and surprised by is on our West Kauai outreach, there was actually significant pushback from the Native Hawaiian communities. And very much from a notion of distrust, suspicion of government, and totally understandable, even though we kind of tried to explain this would be voluntary. It's not but very much of an issue. And, you know, a few weeks after that, we were presenting with some others over in Columbia University at a kind of a global symposium on managed retreat. And coincidentally, one of the biggest takeaways I got was some of the folks and planners from Fiji and Oceania would essentially explain, and they've gone through managed retreat with their communities, actually moved them out of the area to a new area, and explaining that from an indigenous person standpoint and the notion of self-determination in the face of climate change, we do not approach policies of managed retreat until the ocean is lapping at the house's edge. Right. And so that made a lot of sense to us, given our recent discussions that we've had in West Kauai. Yeah. Having said that, you know, we're not necessarily not going to pursue it, in the sense that we think that pursuing the policy from an approach in which we can say, here's the draft of how it could be executed and implemented. Here it is. It's not necessarily ready to be adopted today, but should there be a threat, whether it be litigation on the constitutionality of seawalls, whether there be a bit more openness from various communities to it, but here's the policy as it could be introduced, but not necessarily introducing it at the onset. So that's kind of the way that it's kind of unfolding. But we'll see how the community responds to that approach. We'll see. Yes. And I think, and then on a side note, the American Planning Association National Awards, 4 awards every year for different categories. The Resiliency and Sustainability Award this year, they've chosen Kauai's Sea Level Rise District. So it's kind of awesome. We're real planners, I guess. But I've been saying this as we present around it, because we've got a lot of national inquiries to present on it. And I think a lot of our approach in the Sea Level Rise Ordinance on Kauai, I say the science behind modeling sea level rise is insanely complex. And I give Chip Fletcher and Tiffany Anderson all the credit for creating that model. It took us 3 years to understand that data. But once we actually understood it, and Chip told us they have the depths associated with it, I'm not kidding, it took us 3 hours to draft the ordinance and another 3 hours to map it. It is basically, here's the temporal waters associated with sea level rise. You need to elevate your structure to get it out of its way. And it is such a simple, in hindsight, looking back, it's such a simple response to sea level rise. We've been calling it a stupidly simple response to sea level rise. Not in a bad way, just it's coming, move out of its way. So we're kind of.
So that would be vertical retreat instead of horizontal retreat.
Yeah, it doesn't delve into the hardcore constitutional property rights saying you can't develop in these areas. Yeah. But the temporal waters, the passive flooding and highway runoff, which are temporal waters in nature, they're gonna move out of the way, they're gonna pond.
Yeah.
But saying you can at least elevate and get out of its way from a height perspective as opposed to a lateral perspective. So kind of cool we're getting that award and just kudos to the team. So
Congratulations. Okay, any comments or questions for Kaina's update?
Just one, I mean, I think OCCL, we would like to work more closely with all of our county planning departments, because as regulators, we really intersect with the planning side. And landowners, we're trying to figure out what's the best solution. So, Michael Kane's got his hand up back there, but yeah,
Well, with that needed.
Not that it was intentional.
I would love to have a presentation on this. I think it would really help us in our work. So we'd love to invite you. If you are. I don't know what. I want to hear more about this more than we can probably do in this room. So,
I mean,
like how you're implementing elevated retreat. I don't know if that's the right word.
Absolutely.
Whatever. All right, elevated retreat. So let's talk about. It can be more than just OCCO,
but it might be more, maybe where we are working with the counties on a regular basis on one, because we're doing that with the Board of Water Supplies, all the different, and we're meeting with C1. And so the more that we're coordinated in understanding both from a regulation, planning, implementation, probably we're being much more helpful to the public who's kind of caught in the middle here. So maybe we should think about that in the future, just having these coordinated monthly meetings with the counties to check in, for us to have good conversation. And it's not just OCCL, it is C1. I mean, it's, all of these, but how can we best address this problem, this mounting issue collectively?
no, absolutely, and we're totally available. And I'll just note, and having gone to Columbia and working on some of the managed retreat stuff and doing it ad nauseum, I can say that we're Justine and I and a couple other people were on the Congress of Planning Officials managed retreat panel, and and Michael Kane was sitting in the back of the room. We're all kind of like, the prohibition on seawalls is hands down the most progressive approach to managed retreat in the nation, and somehow Michael Kane is not on this panel. So anyways.
Yes. Thank you, congratulations.
Yeah. And I wanted to note that Justine Meeting-Polly also attended that Columbia thing to bring our wisdom and collect wisdom. Bring it back. Thank you. Let's see, I want to know.
There are two hands are up.
Oh, wait, member Diana Felton is here from the Department of Health. Thank you. I know you had something else and we appreciate you coming. So there's a hand up there? Director Hurd, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I did want to make a comment. You were asking comments about the previous presentation. As far as a commission member update on climate change initiative, I think what I'd like to piggyback on what the co-op representative said is that, with FESPAC coming in June next year, from June 6th to the 16th, what he had to say about sea level rise would be of interest to all of the 28 nations that are coming in. We could have a breakout session. He could do a presentation, to alert rather than, I think he said, while the water's lapping up at your shore, kind of let them know now, this is coming, this is going to happen. And just the initiative would be to suggest that a breakout session or a presentation be included to the FESPAC agenda for the 28 nations, who are pretty much mostly islands, kind of like give them a heads up as to what the award-winning plan was. And, this is what this is a good idea. Maybe take advantage. And also the other initiative, every meeting that I take, every tour that I take always has a piece for climate change. And it's very, I don't know how to share that information, except to say that Dawn, the last time that I was at the Oceanic Institute, they mentioned how fish ponds are going to get covered up. So we need to plan on how to deal with the fact that these wonderful cultural, historic food producing entities or creations need to deal with sea level rise. Because if the water goes up and the fish can jump over the rocks, then, you know, it defeats the whole idea of the fish pond. So what I'm saying is every meeting that I go to, I can put a dotted line to, oh, you know, this is climate change. We better deal with it. And that was pretty much my comment, is that let's take this information and spread it to the 28 nations that will be in town next June. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. I will pass your suggestion along to my colleague Dennis Lane, who is within DBED is the lead for the Best Pack, along with other sponsors. Thank you. Let's see, can we go to on Zoom land, first April and then Josh Cooper?
Aloha. I don't have any new updates for County of Hawaii. We did, but I think we reported on it last time. We did complete our climate action plan for the county, and it was adopted by the county council, but otherwise I don't have any new updates. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Go ahead, Josh.
Thank you so much. It was very, very much looking forward to coming to the meeting in August. It was on our schedule, but of course, everyone knows what took place on that day. So we've had to definitely shift a lot of the work of what's going on Maui from one of what we all know that there's a climate crisis to really looking at response and recovery. And so we're very active now in the Office of Recovery, focusing predominantly on cultural and natural resources, and also very active on the resiliency hubs. As we had set up many hubs along West Maui, as well as in Kula, what we had different studies being done and previous administration was looking at, we actually have the hands-on experience of setting up those resiliency hubs and seeing how we can ensure that there's different models, sort of a hub and spoke with county buildings and natural organic ones that grew up from the community, or a celestial model in a way of brightest ones with the areas where everybody can make sure they have Wi-Fi, they have electricity, they can charge their phones, they can be informed of what's happening, and then just the natural places where people have gathered. So that is growing and happening. The other aspect of what we're looking at, what's great to hear from Kauai as well, we've been looking and working more in the Pacific with the human rights-based approach to really movement of people and looking at where they have to go. And we're looking, of course, with Lahaina as a space that a lot of those places that were there right on the shore will not be in the future, and seeing how to actually take all the lessons from around the world to see it more as a sustainability space and one that's really based for the community. A couple of announcements regarding what was also just shared about Climate Action Resiliency Plan is ours didn't make it at the end of the last administration. So we are reconstituting the Climate Action Resiliency Plan community, as well as the Resiliency Hui, consisting of county officials. And our first meeting will be at the end of this month in November and go through Earth Day and then look for its full adoption. We also just commemorated our first Maui Nui Climate Week, and that was exciting to partner with all the other 4 counties on a couple of panels, as well as county council members. And the last 2 things we'll share is just one pilot that came out. We received many communications from people around the world wanting to contribute and wanting to see how they could give back. And one that first came in was from a forester in Pennsylvania. So I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. So a lot of our time is going through these ideas, and this one turned out really well. He actually wanted to plant indigenous plants, 2 trees and 2 shrubs. And so we've coordinated now, and he's actually he purchased 100 trees, and he wants 25 families to have 2 trees and 2 shrubs each. And we're working on a signage that'll also be at the airport. But as visitors come back, that'll be one way that people can contribute. And it also goes along with our Maui Nui Million Native Tree Planting that we had initiated before everything that happened in August. But honored to participate and really appreciate hearing from Kauai as well as our representatives and senators. Mahalo.
Thank you, Josh. Any comments or questions on County of Maui's presentation? Seeing none. We have a report from city and county? No?
No, online.
Online.
Sorry, took me a second to unmute there. I just have a couple items today. A quick update on two plans that have already been reported out to this group in previous meetings, but just status updates. So the Climate Ready Oahu draft, public draft, has been released, and it's available on the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resilience website. And you can read the plan and comment straight into the website, the way it's set up there. And those comments will be open through December 1st. And then secondly, the primary urban center development plan. The proposed plan was transmitted about a week and a half ago to Planning Commission. And the hearing for that is November 15th. So that is the last Planning Commission hearing of the year, and council also goes on recess. So we won't expect to see that plan get to council until early next year. So thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Okay. Okay, that let's see, that covers our 4 counties. Do we have Leah, who have we missed?
I don't think we've had an update from Department of Ag. I don't know if Director Hurd, that was your update, the comment, or if you had more to share.
I did. You know, I always do. Ha 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 ha.
Go ahead.
The chart that was presented by James McCallan was really good. It was like a very good roadmap for us. But the Department of, I think it was very reflective of the Department of Health's point of view. So if each of the different departments can have their own expert review, you know, I think we can insert our point of view into the chart. Maybe not 12 pages, but just, you know, change a little bit of the bullet points to reflect some of our concerns. And as I said, they were excellent, a little bit biased to Department of Health. And the other thing I wanted to say was that every meeting that we take, I think everybody on in this room and the call, every meeting we take has a climate change piece to it, you know, and it would be a good idea if we could somehow share those with each other, similar to the visit to Oceanic Institute, where they talked about all these sea cages that they have out in the Pacific and fish ponds that we're working so hard to resurrect for conservation as well as food production. You know, we should share these because, as I said earlier, the FESPAC group would have similar types of concerns. And I don't know, how do we share these? So that was it. Just all the information we're gathering independently seems to stay with us, you might say. So anyway, I see Ed getting excited. Ed, you have a comment?
No, sorry. Okay. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for the Department of Agriculture's update. Department of Health, Diana Felton.
Yeah, Director Hurd, we'd love to have someone from the Department of Agriculture join our climate and health working group to add their input into sort of our efforts from the health standpoint on climate change. So if anyone's interested, they can contact me or James as well. But we would love to have that input, particularly because food security and agricultural related health impacts is definitely not an expertise that we have a lot of at DOH. So that would be really great.
Happy to
Thank
help,
you.
but now I understand why Ed was getting all excited. He was trying to tell me, shut up there, be quiet, Sharon. You're gonna be asked to be on the committee. I get it.
Just an offer.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Diana, do you want to make a additional update? In addition, James gave a very nice presentation on the framework that you've developed. Do you want to add stuff?
Yeah, sure. So, and I know you guys heard sort of some of our outreach efforts and trying to follow up with the House resolution on climate and health. In addition, we're working on, if it wasn't mentioned, a statewide vulnerability assessment, really health focused. Director Hurd made a great point that, you know, a lot of that stuff is very Department of Health angle, but that's really our mission, is to make the health aspects of climate change really more out in the open, because we feel like that hasn't always been as much of a notice of focus. So we've been working on that. We've developed this great group of climate and health working group that consists of researchers and physicians, folks from JABSON, UH, different state agencies, and we're really gaining some momentum with that group, which is great. Trying to have it be facilitated by the Department of Health, but really be its own independent working group that is not influenced by Department of Health policy, although we are part of it. And then the statewide vulnerability assessment, trying to really hash out the individual data supported health risks from climate change, and then sort of looking at some of those data gaps and figuring out how we can research some of the problems. So an example is we're working on a health study right now on heat, looking at heat from May 1st to October 1st this year, and looking at emergency room visits and clinic visits for heat-related illness, and then trying to correlate those with temperature, wet bulb index levels, and trade winds presence or absence. So that we're right in the thick of the data analysis there, and we hope to have some information on that coming soon. And we're hoping that that information can either support or tell us we don't need to worry about some future, heat risks, and whether we need to start thinking about cooling centers or subsidies for air conditioning or some of these other methods for dealing with heat. So more to come on that. And then I do have an update. I'm not sure, did Mary Ann give an update already on the greenhouse gas emissions inventories?
Yeah.
So I have an update there as well. So the Clean Air Branch received the technical support document and spreadsheets for the new inventory years for 2020 and 2021. And also the updates to the previous years. They just received those in September. And they're currently working through comments, and they're expecting the next technical support document the end of November, and which will include 2022 to 2045 projections. And then the second annual statewide greenhouse gas emissions inventory report, going all the way up through projections through this year, is expected in January, with the final to be completed in March of 2024. Oh, excuse me, that goes up to through 2021. And then the 2022 greenhouse gas emissions inventory will be begin work at that point, once those are finished in March.
Thank you, thank you. Any comments or questions for Dr. Falcon? Anything else? Okay, and let's see. So,
Joe?
what's that?
Please, Joe.
Yes, go ahead.
DHEO we don't have any new initiatives to report. Of course, a lot of our participation, our staff participates in a number of climate change initiatives, sustainability groups, because of course our communities are impacted. We have a lot of communities on coastal lands built very close to the coast, and so we are exploring things like managed retreat. How will we do that? Elevated retreat, I guess, was a term that was used today. And so all of those things we are looking at, but nothing new. I mean, these are all things that are in our planning, and we've been looking at these for a long time. I think we reported back in June some of the things that we were doing. So nothing new. We just continue to try to work with our specific within our specific parameters, right, our homelands and our beneficiaries, to make sure that
we are managing our lands as well as possible when it comes to climate change and sustainability initiatives.
Thank you very much. Let's see, Ed and followed by you. Start with Ed.
So on the adaptation side, we're still moving forward with our adaptation action plan for highways. We have two projects that are being, that are retreat. One is on Maui, Honolulu Highway. Yeah. On the southern extension of the bypass, we're moving that further north, but to make sure we're outside of the inundation zone there. Yeah. Now we got 45 million in federal support in addition, so 25 from the shots and another 20 from the federal government, just to make sure that $90 million project was more sustained. Yeah. With that project, we're building in nature-based solutions on the beach side to make sure that we can take advantage of that as well. Because that lower road is going to stay in place in some way, shape, or form, whether it's a beach road or it's a bike or walking path, it'll be there. And the lower portions will either be protected or the beach will be allowed to take it back. And that's going to be in the environmental documents for the community to decide. On Oahu Laniakea is going to be a shorter relocation at this time, partially to take care of some safety issues, partially to take care of the short-term inundation issues that are coming up right now. So that's moving forward this year as well. Airports and harbors are moving forward on their adaptation action plans now. So they're doing the risk assessments for all of their facilities and coming up with their plan. They should be done by the plan with their draft plan by the end of next year. So they'll have their actions from there. And all those three plans will be tied together as a multimodal plan rather than just airports, highways, and harbors. So it's all going to be connected. On the mitigation side, we're still moving forward with our electrification. Right now, we're at about 250 vehicles just on the DOT side. About 280 total that's coming through that electrification contract. And that contract is open to all state agencies, all county agencies. So everybody has got to hurry up because right now of that 280, 250 is DOT. And that includes our light duty fleets. It includes 150 Ford Lightnings that are coming in to make sure we can take care of our medium duty facilities. And it also includes our wiki bus shuttles that are going to be electrified. We have two autonomous electric shuttles on UH right now. One at Manoa, and one's going to start up in a couple days. So we can normalize autonomous vehicles in those areas. First, connecting on the campus itself because we don't need permits for that. Yeah. When we get the bugs out of things, we'll take it to the community after that. Make sure that we can push that further so that transit piece can be autonomous for that piece. And we're working with the city county on both of those. In addition to the 280 vehicles, I think we have like 275 level 2 chargers that came in, another 47 fast chargers that are on top of that. And we're using that to put in another 45 fast chargers in the airport, in the parking structures, and 50 in the inside. On the upper levels, so we can see how it'll look. We can tie it into the panels, and we can work it out from there. We don't have the act that allowed us to offer free parking, and quite frankly, we shouldn't right now, not in that way. But the charging will be in that area, and we'll see how we'll take care of the rates from there.
I like the free parking.
People were using it as they were parking going to work and coming back again, so they were blocking up on
They were legitimate, both of us were legitimate. I'm sorry.
I think, well, in the past, airport parking was at a premium because we were using a portion for the contract. But now that we moved the contract out, we have another portion that's available. So after that act had sunset, highways, we just move forward and develop rules that allow electric vehicles to use HOV and everything outside of the legislation. We can see what it would look like for airports and what impacts it would see.
Everyone's used to it now.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We want to incentivize, we want to make sure that it's available for everybody. But the electrification piece can grow quite a bit. Fully understanding though, and this is kind of why I brought up the whole goals piece, because I don't know what's enough. By 2030, I don't know if all light duty state vehicles going to electric is enough. And quite frankly, I don't know if there's enough electric vehicles for it.
There isn't.
So when we start talking to other options, we're working with Toyota now to try and see if we can bring in Mirai into the system. And trying to see how many Mirai we have to have on the system for them to build another hydrogen fueling station. One near, maybe one near the harbors area. So we can have a fueling station there for more hydrogen vehicles. Because whether or not hydrogen vehicles are as efficient as electric vehicles, I think that additional technology is going to be necessary for us to hit our goals. But again, I don't know until I know what the goals are and I know what piece we have to hit in those areas. In addition, we're trying to push to incentivize more e-bikes to go in the system. We have a subsidy for e-bikes, so we can pay for half of it, up to $500, provided you're over 18, provided you're a full-time student, you don't own a vehicle, or you're in some kind of assistance.
And you don't do wheelies down Klondike.
Yeah, but we couldn't put that in our requirements, but but those are there. But with that, even with that, and we set aside about 700,000 of our own funding because the funds that we got from legislature were locked in a bucket that we can't touch. We used our own operational funds. We put 700,000 aside for this, but only 270 people took advantage of it. So there's not that big request yet from the community. We're trying to get more information out to the community, just trying to get more people there. So if you guys don't own a vehicle over 18 or hit those metrics, you should get one. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. Trying to incentivize more people to take those short trips with e-bikes. For airports, we own the facilities. We don't own the planes. Can't tell the planes to use different types of fuels. We can't come with electric, but we're working with them to try and see how we can electrify more of their operations. We've worked with them to put in conditioned air. So I don't know if you guys noticed, when you guys come in an airplane comes in, they can turn off the engine now because they can plug into conditioned air that'll feed the cabin so that you don't get all hot when you're getting off and on. And also they plug in at the gate so that they don't have to keep running everything. That takes tremendous emissions out of it. But that being said, it's only available if those planes can get to the gates. So in areas like Hawai'i, where there's an overage of planes coming through, given the gates that we have, they can't even get to the gates sometimes. So they're parking on the runway for 45 minutes before they come in. So we try to resolve that by increasing the number of gates, not to increase the number of people, but to increase the access to those gates. And it's a difficulty when we work with the community on that. They think we try to bring more people there. On the harbor side, we're working with them to see if we can bring in electric and hydrogen port equipment so they can test it out. Again, we don't own the equipment. That's the shippers that own that. But we're trying to bring it in so they can pilot it, see if we can normalize it. And if so, we can set up microgrids to help support them on it. So we'll keep working with them on that. We keep moving forward on materials. It's a big thing for all of us. I think in our operations, we see that we can control about 6% of the emissions just based on the operations that we have. Definitely our carbonized concrete is a big thing. And I hope that other agencies are dictating or demanding that their agencies use it for any kind of construction they do. We've already tested it, and a developer has built a 4-story structure with it. So we know it's structurally sound, we know it works, we know it's feasible and viable, and everybody should use it. Because not only do we lock in carbon that's already produced in manufacturing into that mix, but because we get stronger mixes out of it, we can reduce the cement percentage. When we do that, there's a even bigger reduction in carbon in your operations. With that, we're always using better materials for our pavements to ensure that we get 25 to 30 year life out of it, not the 7 years that we had before. So we can minimize 3 times the maintenance operations that were used in the past. We can get the emissions out of that. We're also piloting plastic in the pavement to ensure that we can see if we can put more waste in our pavements to make it better from that perspective. We continue to move forward, ensuring that we consider emissions in all of our projects. And that being said, we're still going to build new roads. Now, a couple of projects that we're getting absolutely unfairly criticized for, Farrington Highway widening from the golf course to Fort River Road. That area was a city road. They never did anything there. Because of that, 5 developments, including yours, and including Horton's, plus 3 of your schools, were all locked up and can't put into forward. So we took over the widening. It was to widen it to 6 lanes. That was required by the Land Use Commission. We came in and argued with the Land Use Commission that that's not necessary based on our analysis. So based on our analysis, we're widening it by 1 lane. It's a 3-lane facility. 2 lanes in 1 lane each direction, 1 continuous turn lane throughout, to ensure that we take care of the capacity at the intersection where we saw the problem, not the throughputs. But if I'm totally dead wrong, I can always counter for it to make sure that I get the peak capacity in the areas that we have. We get criticized because we're expanding roadways, and we're getting criticized because we're going to be increasing DMT. I don't believe my one lane will increase BMT. I believe it's 15,000 units that's gonna be built in that area that's gonna be increasing BMT. So these are the discussions I think we gotta have, because in reality, we didn't widen that facility. We rolled that in by 3 lanes. That's what we did. We got criticized tremendously on the TOD call by 2 of the senators. Nobody on this committee or this commission said anything about it. So part of the discussions I think here should be how we're moving forward together to incentivize these actions. So those are, I mean, there's like 10 more things I can talk about, but I'll stop now.
Points well taken.
Actually, there's one more action I'd like to talk about real quick. So fire mitigation statewide.
Yes.
Given the Lahaina, we've directed our crews to ensure that we work with fire on all islands to identify the high priority areas and mitigate the fuel there. In some cases, it's reducing fuel throughout, which because it's all on buffalo grass and fallow grounds for, right? Now there is just the hot coal and stuff like that. So we're either going in and reducing all the fuel or putting in fire breaks where fire directs us to. So, and we're doing all those different areas. Once we cut it, if we don't do anything about it, it's just gonna go back. So we're working with Rick Barbosa now to come up to develop a native planting palette for these different areas to hopefully get natives to proliferate in those areas and take over. So we have drought resistant materials in those areas. So that's the push that we have with all of those. And I think it ties directly into the paint that you're trying to put together. Yeah. Love to work with you guys on that. Sorry.
Oh, no, you just made me think and double check. So the question about using the carbon, mineralized concrete.
Yeah.
We passed in 2022 in the Interstate Energy Efficiency Bill that included language under Chapter 107 that the design and construction of new state facilities should minimize the carbon footprint, use building materials that minimize the carbon footprint. So it's in there. I mean, it's soft language, but that kind of thing probably has not.
I totally agree.
Been paid much attention to.
I totally agree.
It's in there.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something the commission can talk about, all these little things that it's hard to do constant follow-up on how it's being implemented or we test something, we've got energy office on one hand, but that doesn't mean the other agencies are gonna like listen when they say you should do this or, whoever is saying it. So everyone's kind of out on their own. Yeah.
Okay, Department of Education.
So I don't have any updates, but I do want to share. So I know it's been, I think there's some change of hands with, board chair and prior, I think it was Chair Fox that attended. I was a member of the commission, and we had a few folks sit in. I know the video of the girl is the person, but going to what the director Stephen has kind of alluded to where we as a deal, we gotta sit down and really put forth what is our goals, short and long, and then draw a line and sand it go there. I know the department, we don't have a specialized area for it, so I know it falls under facilities, but we have a lot of opportunities within the department to, or that's affected by climate change, sea level rise, or we got campuses that are in the coastal areas, Waianae, Alpha, we got a lot of food waste, right? We have transportation for buses, so there's a lot of opportunities there. It's just probably need to sit down and really map that out, and then we can come to the commission and work with you all to hold us accountable to that. I know Leah had mentioned back, I think the department had an initiative to plant more trees.
Yes.
I know when we do new construction for schools, that's also factored in. But I think with the SFA now, I mean, it's a little challenging, and I don't think we've built a new school since I think we had some in the whole Kelly on the west side, right? So I don't have any updates, but I do need to take this back to really have that discussion with deputy and even the superintendent, and also is to not over the facilities area. So that's where I reside. So a lot of these things come to our area. A good one is composting, where we have that pilot that we relocated from back in 2018. So there's a lot of things that the department can do. I know we've had no really updates to provide, I think, over the last few commission meetings, and I apologize for that, but I will take this back and we'll get together and the leadership team and we figure this out. So
Thank you.
Thank you. If I can just comment, go ahead. I think, the talk about the goals is important, and because as Sharon had said, I think she was saying everybody in these meetings have meetings that have climate change as addressed. I don't know what you guys need, what meetings you guys are, because the meetings I'm in, they're saying, why are you spending this money on all this other stuff, but you should be helping me get to where I want to go. So for me, having goals to show what we need to get to, then being able to tell everybody, this is what what improvements you're gonna get out of it. It would be really important to help us start shortcutting some of these fights that we have in everybody all the time. Because we want to make sure we take care of these goals. We're requiring our staff to put in 1,000 trees a year right now. Because I know by 2030, we're gonna have to need offsets, local offsets to make sure we get to our goal. I don't know how much though. So the 1,000 is a swag right now. 1,000 per year is a swag right now until I know what that goal will look like. Yeah. So just really important to have.
No, you raised a really good point. I mean, and so I really appreciate sort of the pig and your comments. I think what I'm finding over at DLNR is some of the goals we may have to revisit again because climate change is just accelerating. I mean, it's faster than we are prepared for. I mean, both between our reforestation efforts and we're finding federal partners to help us partner up and manage more forest areas. But as we're, it's just not enough. I mean, droughts are there. It is. We established. I think the last time I updated, we brought back the Drought Council. The Drought Council has, or National Weather Service has indicated we're going to go from a dry summer, dry fall, dry winter, dry spring into another dry summer. And I mean, I don't know if Josh was on the call, still on the call, but we just received some really, in my mind, frightening news about Hula. Those guys are going to run out of water. So I mean, so I think having these metrics to evaluate where are we, what are our goals, and but also updating. So that's why I think this PIG and this work plan is really relevant for us. That we're working in little silos and not doing enough of the collaboration and connecting with each other to be more effective. Because what I'm finding in DLNR, drought and fire and climate change is exacerbating the issues we have, like water. There is not enough water. There's not, the ungulates are taking over more of our forest. So, I mean, I think we always just feel like, I just feel like we're just constantly reacting. We're not really having enough a proactive plan. And maybe I think, so having this work plan, readjusting our goals to be more relevant, bringing in, I mean, I would like to see yet more subject matter experts come in and tell us, things have changed and we now have to make, changing our adjustments. So, I mean, I think that there's great opportunities sitting on this climate commission to really to provide the public some level of one, information, and then two, also tangible. I mean, I appreciated Ed's updates were very tangible. These are actual things that you're really doing and how you're meeting your goals. So, I mean, I think having those kinds of we're probably preaching amongst the choir here, right? So how are we taking that information out to the public to raise their level of comfort that people in charge are really doing something that's going to improve or prepare them for this next journey that we're all on. I think they're scared like all of the rest of us. So I do look forward to the opportunity for us to be more engaged and working in a more moving forward in something much more constructive, so that we can look at our legislators and say, okay, these are gaps and we need help here, but being more targeted and prioritizing where those are. That's my update. I don't have a lot of updates other than it's dire out there. It's not getting, I mean, between, I'm looking at, are we conserving at least 30% of our land and coastal waters? We're just trying to protect the ones that we've got. I mean, it's just, the one good thing, I think we are probably going to exceed our 30% of managing our watershed and our forests. And that's really due to partnerships like with the federal government, DOD, providing us funds to acquire like 1,000 acres at Monowili. So, I mean, so it's those kinds of partnerships that are really gonna enable us to move forward, but, I think we recognize we can no longer do this as in isolation or in silos. We have to work together. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's see, if I missed anybody who wants to give an update.
Does Haima, want to give an update at all? Or Don? And Justine?
Yeah, I currently don't have anything. Administrator had put me on this commission. So, I'll try to get an update if he's not available the next meeting, but, yeah, it's ongoing, Lahaina. Disaster, we're closing out our response, portion. And I'm trying to get this camera going here. And then slowly moving into the recovery portion of our operation. So as you can tell, let's see if that video works now. As you can tell from some of the media reports, we are moving into from our phase 1 EPA hazardous waste operations. They're almost complete, probably done by next week for full completion, and then moving on to phase 2. So as you saw in the media also, they already started a PPDR, the private property disposal removal. So for Kula, since we're talking about Kula as well and during this meeting, yeah, that's one of the things that is moving forward, and all the debris will be going to the Central Maui landfill, which we've had some delays in trying to get DOH's input on it, but we finally come to a compromise, and we're able to move forward. So that's kind of the latest from Haima on our side. Operations are continuing. We also had our Mililani Mauka wildfire, the Kipapa Ballroom fire that we responded to this past week, and also continue to do if any red flag warnings in a hurricane that ends at the end of this month. So other than that, if you have pending any questions, that's all I got for now.
Thank you, Don. Any questions for Mr. Owo? I have one question. Is the Mililani Mauka fire fully contained?
Currently, it's been reported by HFD that's 90% contained. But it has no structural or any private property damage so far. So it's just burning on the debris, but I mean the foliage out there. But as far as we know, that's all that's been happening. It's mostly on the Oahu National Wildlife Refuge right now. I believe the Army lands or the South Range, or I forgot what it's called, but East Range, I'm sorry, Schofield East Range is extinguished. So it's mostly on the Department of Interior lands of part of the wildlife refuge that's currently being administered by Mr. Eric Johnson of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Yeah, so hopefully they'll get extinguished soon, because yeah, it's a scary thing, after Lahaina, that this is ongoing, and it's near, I think it's only about 2 miles out, I guess, from Mililani Mauka. So yeah, continue to hope and pray for that to be extinguished soon.
Yes, I certainly do. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, Justine, did you want to make an update?
Yep, thanks. Sorry, Marilyn. I thought since you hear me talking about all this stuff all the time, you probably want to skip me. But so for the CZM program in the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, we are primarily working on the adaptation side under our Ocean Resources Management Plan for the state. And so since the last meeting, I'm pleased to share that a proposal that we worked on with DHHL's planning office has been funded. And it's to look at how to address shoreline setbacks potentially and or special management area type considerations within the realm of DHHL responsibilities, sort of looking at the different opinions and discussions that have occurred previously and how that might be implemented for DHHL's purposes and what is suitable for them and their homesteaders. So very pleased. We just received funding last month and are working on our RFP right now, and that's with the DHHL's planning office folks. The other Taina mentioned, or Director Hall mentioned that, you know, although implementation might not be ripe necessarily for discussions relating to managed retreat, the office still continues and works on that kind of maybe not 50,000 foot level, but 30,000 foot level analysis relating to policies that either can facilitate or are hindering moving forward on it, as well as funding and financing mechanisms that may be possible to approach as the need for managed retreat happens. Hopefully not. I know there are issues now, but as Kaina mentioned, the discussions sometimes can't happen until the water is at people's door. But having that framework or having an understanding of what that would mean from a policy side and potential funding mechanisms, I think is important to set as a foundation and get that work started. So that's a collaborative project we're working on with the counties as well as some of their state agencies. We have just completed and released the phase 1 of our methodology for a project under our overall regional shoreline management initiative. And that project is to help identify the scales by which it might be more appropriate to manage areas of shoreline as opposed to by property owner, where the continued challenges of hardening and sandbags exist. And it's intended to provide opportunities for adaptation relating to implementing nature-based solutions, as well as other types of adaptation that will be required as we move forward. So we have that publicly available, and we can share that to Leah in the chat to be included in the minutes. Generally, what the overall outcome is supposed to be looking forward is a coastal atlas that identifies the types of shorelines, the typologies, as well as the back-end development, and then how the water is interacting with that area, as well as the area that might make it easier to do renourishment if that's a feasible or allowable use, and where we are going to have to choose to do hardening and all of the kind of spectrums in between. So happy to share that. Let's see. Chair Chang, we did convene a meeting. So our CZM program does convene meetings with the county planning departments, generally on a monthly basis, particularly relating to SMA. But we also did convene a specific meeting October 19th for coordination purposes, trying to bring a focus to what makes sense to meet on, perhaps on a regular basis or on a situational basis, depending on the scenario. So OCCL staff did participate. Unfortunately, administrator was very busy that day and wasn't able to be there. So we have existing ongoing efforts. The point is really can we meet for everything all the time, which is unlikely. So how do we focus on specific situations that might make sense? And how can we, as CZM, support that coordination effort between those agencies that have shoreline management responsibilities, like yourselves and the county planning departments. So I'm happy to share more with you on that another time, Chair. And then our coastal management fellow, who has been working with Leia's group relating to climate justice and equity, is working on continuing her work on her project, which is to identify communities that are subject to sea level rise and coastal erosion risks, and identifying more data-based information relating to what equity and justice might mean in that regard. And so she has narrowed down that information from a census tract to a block group level. And we've been making comparisons to the White House CJUST model. Our intention had been to utilize the outcomes for that resource for us to help us to identify where we can utilize our funding and direct our federal funding opportunities for areas that do have particular risk, such as Farrington Highway issues and having all of those resources cut off and having only one ingress route. So, and then the last thing is the Act 178 work from session 2021 for adaptation of state facilities. We did receive CIP operating. We're working on that with BNF. And we are drafting RFP with the assistance from different agencies who are involved in the action team that we are convening relating to developing a standardized vulnerability assessment process of how to integrate adaptation into planning for CIP. So I think that's it. Oh, and in regards to coastal protection, the 30% goal, Chair Chang, that you mentioned, the CZM program does administer a bipartisan infrastructure law competitive process, and that does include acquisition of funds as well as habitat restoration, not acquisition of funds, excuse me, lands. So we did reach out this year, but I don't think we were ready to kind of put together a proposal with your folks. And so hopefully we can sort of start doing that for an expected summer kind of letter of intent process. So look forward to working with your folks then. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, questions for host,
We have one on Zoom.
Go ahead.
Don?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to add to, I forgot. Yeah, I mean, this is a climate commission. We did do our statewide hazard mitigation kickoff in Maui as well, and I think we had a lot of participants that's on the commission as well. And then we also participated in a FEMA workshop that had to do with the sea level rise issue in the Mapunapuna Kali'ikai area this week as well. And we're continuing to work, and thank you to DOT Director Sniffen on continued fire mitigation in Maui. It's been a blessing as well as a comfort to many of the Maui community along the highways. So kudos to you, Ed. Mahalo for that, and the continued work that you folks are doing. Regardless of what jurisdiction it's under, it's been helpful with the capacity that Maui County has a very limited highways and public works capacity. So that's kind of helped a lot. So much thanks to all the state agencies throughout our state. It's great that we're doing, like our administrator said, it's a cockle thing. We're in this together, and thanks for the unified effort. And I just want to put that out. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Any other questions for either Donna Woe or Justine Nihipali? No, don't see any. Okay, Thank you, Justine. That was very comprehensive. I appreciate it. So we're moving on to our
Oh,
next,
we haven't heard from David still.
what's that?
David?
No updates.
Oh, no, I think. Oh, but Monique is.
Oh, okay, that's HSCO. Okay,
The
go ahead,
representative.
Monique.
Thank you. I was also delegated last minute to provide an update, but I am more than happy to provide an update on our Act 238 decarbonization strategy, which has been a huge effort, and I think will definitely answer some of the questions that Ed put forth as far as how much. I think the other aspect of that is ensuring the mitigation actions we go after are indeed mitigation actions. So I think, making sure that the methodology of accounting for things like biofuels, which we know are going to play a huge part in our transition, are indeed green, I guess, and have carbon intensities, life cycle carbon intensities that are less than that of fossil fuel. And I think that also applies to hydrogen as well, which is a great option. It's expensive, but it can be produced in a way that is not clean at all. It can be very dirty. So some of those questions will be answered hopefully by our decarbonization strategy, and we'll have clear policy recommendations surrounding some of the uncertainties. So that's that. I know our office is also working quite a bit on grant applications, so really trying to double down on the federal monies coming from both the Department of Energy as well as the EPA. We've been, I've been working in lockstep with Leah on the climate pollution reduction grants and the PCAP as well. So we are excited to be taking that on this coming year once we submit our decarb strategy. So that's really what I have purview to. I'm sure there's a lot more going on in DBED, and really glad to be here today. Aloha.
Thank you, Monique. And my apologies for speaking too soon. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So, Monique, just wanted to be sure, are the agencies that will be affected by the recommendations, are they gonna have an opportunity to review the report before it goes out? Because a couple of the conversations that were had with harbors so far was to increase the dockage fees for those that don't go to electric trucks, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And if that's a policy, or a policy recommendation is gonna go into the report, I would love to hear about it before it starts moving forward. I mean, those kinds of ramifications on the economy itself would be huge. And I would love to make sure that DOT knows about it before it starts going forward, stuff like that.
No, actually, I totally agree, because we do know that inter-island transportation and freight is critical to our economy and to people on the neighbor islands, farmers, ranchers, and residents. So Monique, just take that back to Mark, that the decarbonization strategy report should be reviewed with the various departments that for which recommendations might impact before it's
And I
released.
could also add, we have been doing a lot of outreach, and we have done a lot of outreach, Ed, with some of your staff, Robin, Sharoma, I think, Robin in your office. We have reached out to him, and we do have a meeting coming up that you are invited to, so I would encourage you to send.
Totally get that. And but from the meetings to the report, I don't know if anything changes. So I'd love to be able to see what goes out. Yeah.
The key recommendations.
Yeah.
I can definitely take that back to Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I
Thank you
just
very
ask,
much.
ask Monique, well, and it's not just to Monique, maybe it's to everybody who's writing reports. When the reports are being prepared, are we engaging the community in the preparation of these reports? So Monique, you're shaking your head. Could you explain how you do that?
So it's been really hard, admittedly, with the time crunch of the report. It's an economy-wide study. And, you know, I think really it's meant to provide a foundation for the follow-on conversation that needs to happen. You know, we're not providing one recommendation. It's going to be many, and we are presenting trade-offs as well. And there's trade-offs and what is accepted by the community and the different communities. It's not, you know, homogenous. Community input's not homogenous by any means. I think that happens later. And, you know, we have been doing outreach and really trying to engage during the process. And I really want to stress that what our approach has been is using like quantitative modeling to really come forward with solutions that are indeed mitigation actions that are meaningfully reducing emissions. And because of that quantitative analysis, it's taken a lot of time to get some of the assumptions going into the key assumptions going into the models. And, you know, I'm not trying to scapegoat anything or anything like that, but it's that trade-off. If you have really sound science going into a short timeline report, having the outputs and presenting them, there's going to have to be sort of a follow-on after the report is published.
No, and I appreciate that. I mean, and I'm in no way criticizing. I think it's more just a process issue. I mean, and I would say, and I'm speaking from personal experience, because DLNR, we get criticized a lot for coming up with plans or with that impact communities, but we don't get community input. So, and when we go out after the fact and we ask for comments, the communities say, you know, it's already a done deal. So I guess this is more of a general comment for all of us, is the need to engage the community in a more proactive way, so they do feel like they're being engaged and heard. And clearly this is not directed to you, Monique, but I think we have to be cognizant. We are dealing with a community that is being, who doesn't trust government because they feel like they've not been engaged in the process at all. So I too am at DLNR. I'm trying to figure out what is the best way to try to engage people in a more proactive way, so that they do feel like we are reflecting, you know, that we're relevant to the general public. I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm still trying to catch up, but I would just urge us to really think about that as we are coming up with plans that will affect people, the broader community. How do we engage them so they feel like they can feel a sense of ownership to these plans, so that they can participate in a meaningful way, rather than government just telling them and feeling like, once again, they don't trust government. So again, not a comment to anyone in particular, but just a process issue that I'm recognizing from my own department, that we need to do better. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Really fast, I just want to respond to that, because I think it's so critical, and admittedly probably the biggest hurdle and challenge I've certainly faced as I've developed this report. And I think what we hear a lot from community is there's also outreach fatigue. And I think a commission and a collective group like this can really help to lower that fatigue. So we are not all separately going out and asking for community input on some of the same subjects. And I think collectively, this commission has a really good, you know, because we are different departments, it provides a really good opportunity to sort of reduce that fatigue and provide, you know, a good space for community members to provide their input.
Thank you, Monique. Okay.
Yeah, and I was just gonna add into the discussion with the community outreach aspect and also when talking about climate mitigation, because it's been coming up a fair amount in our outreach with our own climate adaptation plan. Oftentimes we present the climate mitigation aspect as a straight up GHG reduction for the purposes of GHG reduction, which to a certain degree it is, but in the face of a housing crisis, in the face of the cost for construction and the barriers for people to maintain livelihoods here in Hawaii, they often bump heads with each other. And you know, every time I see a discussion about VMT or a policy about VMT for the purpose of GHG reduction, and that's it, I just have to kind of cringe because with the arrival of the EV vehicles within the secondary market, it's no longer a luxury high-end, I can do this as part of my global commitment to this cause with my $200,000 salary. Now with the EV vehicle in the secondary market, families are literally turning to these or can turn to these for a lower cost of living here in Hawaii. And we often leave that discussion out. And so I think as we approach more mitigation policies, trying to find where those cross sectors are, where they can actually help alleviate some of the other crises we're in, I think is going to be monumental in helping move the barometer for those various policies.
Improves their health too.
Yes, yeah.
That's the thing though. So the discussions on VMT are irrelevant to the general public.
Yeah.
Just generally irrelevant. But this is why it's so important for us to move forward on electrification of the state system. If we electrify our state vehicles, when they term out in that contract, they go into secondary market.
Yeah.
So do rental car vehicles, and they term out faster. So pushing the rental car fleets and the legislation they're going through, super helpful that. Having them convert their fleets to electric allows more people to access those vehicles in secondary market. So those are the big pushes. That's what's relevant to them. I can get an electric vehicle. I can drive a Tesla now for a lot less cost, right? Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's about equity, because so too often, right? I mean, there's been a disenfranchised community, and that's in particular the Native Hawaiians or rural communities, who have not felt and who have felt somewhat climate change is kind of a luxury, but yet they're the ones first impacted. So I think we have an opportunity to try to, how do we make it more relevant? How do we make electric vehicles so that's something they can buy when they don't have solar panels? But so, I mean, I think we need to, the lens upon which we need to start looking at some of these policies have got to be through their lens, whether it's either bringing them to the table but I think there's got to be, that we've got to make this much more relevant to the community that is being disproportionately impacted by climate change. And I don't think we're doing a good job of that. And that's that community that feels they cannot trust government. They feel like they've always been on the outs, but they are the ones that are going to start protesting us a lot more. So I think unless we develop we recognize that they are being left behind, and we don't figure out a way to bring them on board in a relevant way, we're going to constantly be having this tension between housing, between water, whatever they may be. So great policies, but if we cannot implement because we're not meeting the needs of the communities that are being impacted and not addressing that disproportionality or the inequity, we're going to constantly be having these where the policies are not meeting the needs of those people. So I don't know what the answer is, but I know that we're facing it daily. Yeah.
I think, yes, I think we all agree, but there are policies that actually are win-win on both sides. So I think if you hear the words climate change and you assume, oh, these climate policies are bad for a vulnerable community, it's not the case across the board. So you have to be informed and understand each policy individually. And also remember that community is not a monolith and that different groups feel differently about different things, not just one thing. And if you're spending a lot of time on one subject matter right now and hearing a lot of things that doesn't necessarily apply to everything. And it probably does apply to some things, but I think it's just important to step back and make sure we're not.
That's fair.
I actually have my hand raised because I was gonna say regarding the decarbonization study, just and the outreach, that it was written into the bill. So it was a bill passed in 2022, and I feel like I wish there was, I've known last session that there was a feeling there wasn't enough time because we could have tried to extend it. But we can always come back to it and maybe build on the work that's been done, because that 2-year time frame is fairly typical. But we did include consultation and collaboration with state agencies, so that should have happened at some level, and hopefully it did. That was written into the legislation.
I think too about the community engagement issue. We think about this a lot at the Department of Health, right? Both in our pre-plans and then also in our sort of reactions to things. And I've been kind of researching it a little bit. There seems to be a growing, I would maybe call it industry or science around community engagement. And there's more and more sort of companies offering consultation for community engagement and actual production of like community engagement plans. And a lot of industries are much farther advanced on this. So for instance, people that go in and redo parks often start with community engagement plans, and they have sort of this whole system. The EPA, for example, when they go in and do a Superfund site cleanup, they have a whole sort of toolkit of how to do community engagement. But if you look at it, steps are so in depth. There's so much work involved that you really need designated people towards it. And that's where I think we're lacking at DOH, and where I'd really like to see us advance. And I think this is probably the case in a lot of places, is it's never been a designated position or a designated job. And unless you have probably multiple people full time to enact all these different strategies, it's really hard to do it as part of your regular job, or, you know, when it hasn't been initial. So I think it's a really interesting idea and how you do that well, because I think people are starting to figure out how to do it well, but then actually implementing those strategies and paying for them and having staff to do them is really tough.
Okay, are we ready to move on to our last agenda item?
I think we have several more.
Three more.
We have 3 more, but.
Wait, we have
Results of survey on sea level rise, 7.
Oh, you're right. Shucks. Okay, well, I think we're getting close to our sell-by time, so we better, rush forward. Item number 7, results of the survey on sea level rise, risk perceptions and policy preferences among Hawaii's elected officials. So, Colin Moore and Katie Loeb, you're here to present your findings on the survey on sea level rise and risk perceptions. Go ahead. Come on up to the table. Great. You have a PowerPoint? Okay. Would you like to rather stand or sit down, whichever you're most comfortable with?
It might be easier to stand.
Okay.
Folks.
Go ahead.
So we'll be quick. I know you're running low on time, but the idea behind this, we were curious what our elected officials thought about sea level rise, potential adaptation strategies. Believe it or not, this has not been done in many other states. And so because Hawaii is so directly affected by this, we thought we'd see what policymakers think. So next slide. So the idea was very simple. We sent a fairly extensive 27-question survey to every member of the state legislature and all members of all county councils. We ran it from June 26th to September 7th. And so this was our response rate. You can see we sent 110 surveys, that's the number of elected officials, and we got 32 responses for a response rate of 29%. That might sound a little bit low. This is actually quite high for an elected official survey, as we political scientists call them. In fact, when Kenny presented this to some folks at Yale, and they were surprised that we could get this many people to fill it out. So what we probably have, though, is a certain amount of response bias. We expect the people who did fill out this survey are legislators or county council members who are more concerned about sea level rise, probably a little more liberal. So when we show these results, keep that in mind. Next slide. Go ahead. So here's the first question we asked, is it already impacting coastlines in your district? And you can see, perhaps not surprisingly, that the vast majority of all of our respondents agree that it already is. This will come out, I should say, as a Bureau report in a couple of weeks. So you'll have a chance if you want. I'll make sure the commission gets a copy to review these more clearly. Go ahead. And of course, when you think it will start harming people in your district, I think this is a pretty significant question because all of our respondents say it'll start harming people in their district in the next 25 years. So for elected officials, I say that this is a relevant and political time. 25 years will affect people in their own careers. And so we might expect them to start taking this very seriously. And then of course, on Hawaii residents, I actually found this somewhat surprising. So everyone thinks it will be significant or catastrophic at a fairly high level. So elected officials across the state are taking this extremely seriously, and they think the consequences will be severe. Then we asked them, how personally are you concerned about sea level rise? And then how concerned do you think your colleagues are about sea level rise? And we asked this because first we expected we'd get respondents who are more concerned than the average official. And also this is a pretty good question because most politicians have a pretty sophisticated sense of where their colleagues stand on various issues. And so not surprisingly, because I told you we thought we probably got a lot of folks who are really concerned about this. Personally, 44% say that they're very concerned, 50% concerned. But then over here, you asked where they think their colleagues stand. It's not quite as concerned. And I tend to think that this could be a reasonable representation of where a lot of our elected officials are standing. This idea of perceived pure concern.
May I pop in?
Yeah.
I also think these findings are, kind of a cause or excuse to have some more conversations about sea level rise and concern. If they think that everyone thinks they're more concerned than their peers, then again, more conversation should happen.
So then we started asking about the consequences of sea level rise. This might be a little hard for you to see. From more frequent flooding in coastal areas, the loss of beaches, the destruction of natural habitat. This green here is all agreed, very likely, virtually certain likely. You see very little, we said 50-50 chance is yellow and red is unlikely. So the legislators we surveyed all think that these are extremely likely to happen in the next 50 years. Then these are the socioeconomic consequences. Again, a sea of green here, from loss of important cultural sites to increase in insurance premiums to the one where there's a little bit of skepticism. Insurance companies stop coverage due to high risk, but basically there is tremendous agreement that all of these effects are going to happen in the next 50 years. And then socioeconomic consequences from public health issues to increased socioeconomic inequality. You can parse these results, and it might be easier when this comes out in the printed version, but you can see overall that pretty much every possible consequence we asked them about, everyone thinks this is going to happen. Either it's going to be certain or it's extremely likely. And then, of course, we asked how well they think that the state is prepared for sea level rise. No one thinks we're well prepared or moderately prepared. This is very honest answers. Somewhat prepared, but the majority of all of the elected officials we surveyed agree that we are underprepared for the consequences of sea level rise. And then we asked them again about the counties. Understandably, a lot of folks didn't really know what was going on at the counties, and that may be an indication that there needs to be more education across the state for elected officials about what the county's adaptation plans are. But again, they also don't think the counties are particularly well prepared. And then I'll turn it over to Penny to talk about the policy practices.
Thanks very much. And so obviously, as Colin just described, policymakers are quite concerned about the impacts of sea level rise, expecting some pretty major consequences in a short timeline. However, when we ask them to where sea level rise falls on their priority list of other policy, you can see for only 9% does it rise to the top of their priorities. And most are in middling, in the mid-list to high priority area. And notably, no county council members have sea level rise as the top of their priority list, 17% of state legislators. So this was kind of a surprising, maybe not surprising to you all. There's a lot of contending priorities, but this is certainly surprising given the context of how serious they think that these impacts are going to be. Next one. So then we asked a series of questions about specific policies. These are divided into sort of the adapt, accommodate, the retreat, and manage retreat buckets. And we culled the policies that we asked questions about from the work you all are doing and from sort of the most common things that are being discussed as responses to sea level rise. So this first one, and I apologize again for the size of the font, but to what degree do you support or oppose the following adapt, accommodate type of policy approaches, right? The one that received the most support was the government, provide government funding to protect or flood-proof or replace critical public infrastructure, equipment, and utilities. High level of support for that. Revise permitting and building codes to allow for adaptation strategies such as elevation of buildings and infrastructure building and flood resilient materials. Again, a very high level degree of support, whereas providing tax or other financial incentives to help property elevate or flood-proof their buildings was much more mixed. We found this in questions across the board that state legislators are less likely to want to protect private property. Next slide. To what degree do you support or oppose the following protect type policy approaches? So again, restore and promote living shorelines that buffer against sea level rise impact, like coral reefs, wetlands, seaside vegetation, very, very popular amongst elected officials. Whereas use of government spending to build walls and other structure barriers to hold back floods from public buildings and infrastructure, a lot more mixed. Seawalls not so popular in Hawaii. Next one. Most of our questions actually grouped around managed retreat. And so there's there's actually 2 slides of policies here. And again, you guys can sit with this and think through a bit more what it all means. Probably the most popular one here was provide government funding to relocate critical infrastructure, equipment, and utilities, followed by changes to regulations such as zoning laws and increased setback or buffer distances to discourage building improvements. Enforcement of Act 16 and create policies that encourage inland rather than coastal development, all very popular. Whereas creating policy that mandates removing seawalls in areas with no beach left after erosion was a little bit more mixed, but still quite popular. And then to the more managed retreat policies that we looked at, incentivize private purchase of coastal lands to maintain and restore natural areas and buffers against sea level rise and storms. Very, very popular. Create permitting conditions that require owners to remove or relocate vulnerable or damaged structures upon a triggering event. Also very popular. A lot more mixed again when we talk about using government spending to help coastal homeowners vacate their homes, but a little bit more favorable if that is done in a way that's equitable. So thinking about people that are, legacy homeowners versus the very wealthy, maybe more favorable towards using government funding to support those folks. So next. So we also asked some questions about the obstacles, and as I was listening to your conversation here, I think that what the policymakers think is really supporting what you've all been saying. You need more funding to implement plans. There's definitely a lack of coordination, perceived lack of coordination among agencies and stakeholders. So a lot of opportunity for improving that. And a lack of funding to prepare a plan. There's also, people are thinking there's insufficient staff and resources to analyze and assess information. Lack of precedent and demonstrated success in policy, indicating we need to do a lot more education and provide some case studies of things that have worked around these issues. And then the lack of existing regulatory tools to implement the policy. So I think that's pretty much it. Oh, there's one more. We also asked, and this is just a teaser, a series of questions trying to get at the values of folks. And very interestingly, so question, do you agree, disagree, or agree with the following statements? A, the government has a responsibility to conserve and protect natural resources and land from sea level rise. In Hawaii, I don't think it's that surprising that there's a huge amount of support for that. The government should protect private coastal property, right? Again, much more mixed. And then coastal property owners should be allowed to protect their property from sea level rise, even if it would negatively impact health resources and land. Given policies that have been passed, it's a good thing that they don't seem to support this. So thank you. I just wanted to say, again, there's actually a lot more data and some other types of approaches that we took. We were looking at where policymakers are getting their data from. You know, do they, like, there are various perceptions about like how sea level rise is happening. That will all be included in the report, but we thought that today, just the topics of their risk perceptions and specific policy support would be the most interesting to you all. So I do hope this is helpful. We're thinking about doing some other iterations of the survey, maybe to agency staff, maybe something around sea level rise to the general Hawaii public. And so, yeah, please would love feedback to know if this is helpful to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, did you notice a difference, because the fire occurred right in the middle of this.
Yeah.
Did you notice, were you able to quantify, is there a different response depending upon whether you took the survey at the beginning versus at the end?
You know, we haven't calculated done the quantifying aspect yet, but we did make note in the survey of, yes, the Lahaina fires happened, and actually was about 12% of our survey responses came in after that. So we do expect there might be an impact from Lahaina.
But the vast majority can be.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments, Amy?
I'm curious if in the setup to the survey or if any of your questions assessed whether the legislators or the policymakers in general were familiar with the sea level rise vulnerability and adaptation reports. And I believe if that was something you addressed.
We did not ask that. Yeah, that would have been a good question.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Ed. Thank you so much. Any other comments or questions? Thank you again for sharing with us.
Sorry, I had one question. Just that was really interesting, and I'm wondering if you're doing for future iterations of that survey, if you'll be trying to get at awareness of what kinds of capacity that agencies may have to deal with these issues, because if regulations get tightened and actions are triggered, we need more reviewers, we might need more engineers in the agencies, we might need whole new agencies to deal with the kinds of implementation that a lot of these measures will need. And I don't know how much of an awareness there is within all elected. I think many have that awareness, but perhaps not all. So if there's a way to shape some questions around that, I think that would be really interesting. Thanks.
It's a great recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Representative Ichiyama.
Question about the survey results. Did you notice any connection between people who said that their district included sea areas and their assessment of the danger of sea level rise versus people's districts who are inland?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the N is way too small to come to any great conclusions about that. But we hope actually to do this survey in other coastal states and have a larger N. In other research, there has been a distinct correlation between respondents being in closer proximity or having more in their jurisdiction, sea coastal areas, than those that are further away. So I would expect, given the other studies that have been done nationally, that would be the case. There would be an impact, but again, there's just so few that we weren't able to crunch enough of any.
There's just so few districts that don't have any, that don't border the coast, that it's
Yeah.
hard to make it's statistically significant.
Yeah.
So there might be, but I wouldn't trust those results because I think you might just be picking up on that.
No, thank you. I think maybe that might help, illustrate your priority setting, right? If you're people coming from a district that is entirely inland, it will have a very different set of priorities than districts at the coast.
Yeah, and we could probably, cut the data sort of more anecdotally that way, but again, not as strong significance with so few coastal, non-coastal, yeah. But, yes, I would imagine that would have an impact on answers.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions for either Colin or is it Kenny? Kenny.
Are we gonna get a copy of that, or is
Yes.
that pop up? Thank
It'll be
you.
released in a couple of weeks,
Okay.
and I'll make sure.
This is interesting. Thank you for doing that.
Yes. Justine, you have your hand raised.
Thanks. I just really wanted to echo Noelle's comments. I think it would be really fascinating to see an additional question about willingness to fund additional capacity. I think that is something that I've been trying to message, that currently it's a huge situation, but it's going to get a lot worse. And for us to rapidly respond or proactively plan for, there needs to be a significant investment that I'm not seeing personally in my program or others that are responding. There's small little offices at the county and the state that are trying to process these things. So it'd be kind of interesting. I'm not sure if there's, a way to integrate, yes, it's a high priority. I feel like it's a high priority as an elected official, but are you willing to, would you be willing to allocate more funding towards things? I don't know if that's something that might be reflected or whether there's a benefit at all, quite honestly. But that was a very interesting presentation and trying to kind of see where, decision makers are, in the realm of sea level rise. Thank you.
Thanks for that comment. We'll try to figure some way to get out that question if we do another round. That's for sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Justine. Are there any other comments or questions before we move on to our second to last? If not, our state climate change coordinator, Leah Laramie, will provide, thank you very much, Colin. Thank you, Ketty. Will provide an update on the EPA grant.
Thanks for sticking it out, everybody. We're nearly there. It's short, I promise. I just wanted to keep you all in the loop of what's been going on with our amazing $3 million climate pollution reduction planning grant. So just as a quick reminder, the planning grant requires the state to put together both a priority climate action plan. This is due March 1st, and a comprehensive climate action plan, which will be due in July, August 2025. So here's the timeline. We're a little bit further along than where it says now, but I didn't mess with the graphic. So we have been awarded this money, and we are really within this tight time crunch of meeting this March 1st deadline to create our priority climate action plan. The priority climate action plan really is just looking at what kind of building a greenhouse gas inventory, which we've already done, so that's great. And looking at greenhouse gas reduction targets, which we've already done, which is great. We've also done our quality assurance plan. We just turned that in, so that's a big win. We did that this morning. And we will be doing additional assessments on identifying the low income and disadvantaged communities and how the projects that we're identifying in this priority climate action plan will impact those areas. Who has the authority to take actions on the actions identified in the priority climate action plan, and also how we can make a plan to leverage other federal funding. On the not so happy news, we ran into a contracting snafu, which did not allow us to contract the contractors that we had selected through the RFP process that we ran through. So we had to reopen the RFP, which has put us several months behind schedule. This RFP has closed. We've received 10 proposals, and the contract is with the AGs at this point in time. So we're hoping that we will get that all completed as soon as possible, because as you know, 3 months to write a priority climate action plan is it's not a ton of time. So that means that some of the things that we're going to try and do in the plan, we're not going to be able to do because of the timeline. So one is a workforce planning analysis, and also a co-benefit analysis of the full scope of the plan. This is okay. This isn't a requirement from EPA. We won't be messing with any of our requirements. This is just was nice to add on, and we're hoping to do those additional things. And these will be done during our comprehensive climate action plan. And even better news, I'm really happy to introduce Udi here, who is our program manager, and he will be helping to take the lead on preparing our priority climate action plan and the comprehensive climate action plan. He started on Monday. I'm thrilled to have him on board. Udi, would you like to introduce yourself quickly? Short and sweet. We already love it. We also have 4 other positions. We have filled our Maui outreach specialist position. They will start on November 16th.
Great.
I think this is great to talk about in our conversations today about outreach and communications with our communities. And this is really the intent of hiring on additional outreach staff that can do this holistic climate change messaging. They will be working both with the counties, with state agencies, and nonprofit organizations that have already been doing this work to see how we can create a unified message across the board, you know, and also go into communities and try to reduce this extractive system that we typically have had, and ask communities, you know, how can we be supporting you, and hope to build those relationships as we go through. We are still waiting on filling the other 3 positions. We're advertising currently for our grant specialist position. So if you know anyone who loves grants and is special at it, please have them shoot me an email, and I will send you folks the link. For the implementation piece of the climate pollution reduction grant, so if you folks recall, there's the planning piece, and then there's a $4.6 billion pot of money for implementation. Because of all the good things, we have had conversations with HSCO, who have agreed to take the lead on the implementation grants. This is largely because they have grant specialists and fiscal office that's able to manage the large pot of money that we're hoping that will be awarded. The application will be a coalition application, which means we'll be partnering both with DLNR, the HSCO, and the counties on this application. So it won't just be the state that's applying, but it will be a collaborative application looking at statewide action, both at the state and local levels. We'll be releasing a request for interest mid-November, and this will allow other entities that are not state and county to also express their interest in participating in this grant with their specific projects. So we'll be sending more information about that out, and the application will be kind of late December, early January, which we all know is very short timing, and we're all crunched for time, but that's because of this timeline again, which is everything that we're proposing in the implementation grant must be covered in the PCAP. So we need to make sure that whatever we're proposing to do in our implementation grant is written into our PCAP. We also need to make sure that we conduct all the analysis required for the application for the implementation grant. So we're all working on this very lovely deadline. And that's why it's happening so quick and fast. But we're really excited about this opportunity, and we're really excited to be opening this up to nonprofits and other agencies, because even if it doesn't get funded in this implementation grant opportunity, this is an opportunity for us to identify all the different types of projects that are ready to go. So we can ask our dear friends, the legislature, for certain funding. We can look at other federal grants for funding, and we can also leverage different resources that are already available to make sure that we're doing all we can to address climate change.
Thank you. Any questions for Leah? Yes, Representative Ichiyama.
Will you let us know when that request for information is posted so we can share it with community members who might be interested in closing a project?
Yes, absolutely. We will be sending out a notice that it will be coming out, and we will send out also the notice when it does come out. We want to make sure people are prepared to respond when it does come out.
And then one quick follow-up question for the implementation grant, is there a state matching requirement?
No, this is one of the grants where there's no match requirement, so it's really, really exciting.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Leah? Okay. All right, Leah, on to your next agenda item.
My computer's not cooperating, sorry. Okay. Okay, bear with me. I'm just gonna share my screen here, so ignore everything now.
I don't need my slides, I can just follow them.
We're good. Yeah, okay, here we go. So coordinators update, wanted to talk to you folks all about some of the work that we're doing on equity. We have been meeting with CEQ, who is the federal agency that is in charge of the CJUST map. This is the Justice 40 map that a lot of federal agencies are using to identify disadvantaged communities. They're only using federal data, and they're only using that data at the census tract level. So we've been meeting with them to try to see if there's any flexibility or wiggle room on that, because it just really does not represent Hawaii very well, and the disadvantaged communities. They had said, no, there's no wiggle room. Even so, we are going to be providing feedback on the map directly through their feedback system. What's really exciting about this is that we are working with all the amazing departments that have already developed maps, such as CZN and the work that they're doing, that have really looked at some of the vulnerable communities through sea level rise and using other data. City and County of Honolulu, Department of Transportation, the broadband folks, and HIEMA, who have all done great analysis and work on identifying both social vulnerability and disadvantaged communities in Hawaii. So we've asked them, and they've all agreed to go through the CJUST map track by track to actually submit feedback saying this is actually, it should be identified as a disadvantaged community. So this is a ton of work that our great partners are taking on and providing this feedback. And so really excited and thankful for them doing this. I think it's really, really important, to make sure that they're incorporating data sets that are more relevant to us. One of the most important ones, I think, that is they don't have on here is Department of Hawaiian Homeland. It's not identified on the CJUST map. All tribal communities have been identified automatically as disadvantaged, and they don't have Department of Hawaiian Homelands on their map at all. So we're asking them to add that data set. And we're hopeful, in our conversations, that did seem like one that they might be a little bit more amenable to, even though it's not considered a federal data set. We are also working on creating a Hawaii map. Why? Because the federal map does not represent what we are seeing on the ground. It will really help us to guide local and state funding and resources to the communities that need it most, and also support community planning needs and assessments. So we're refining the data resources. We're working with our group of amazing equity people to identify what data sets would be the best and most useful. And then we do have an offer out to a climate justice data specialist position to help us to build and refine this map and socialize it with people and get feedback and all those good things. Amy.
Okay. You can just go forward. So Lane just asked me to give you a quick update. We don't even need that slide because I think you all remember, right? This project is really a climate commission project at the Honolulu Beach Park. It's a partnership between the Hawaii Department of Transportation, unfortunately just left, and Oahu Metropolitan Planning Organization, Climate Commission, DLNR, looking at nature-based solutions at the Honolulu Beach Park. So I just wanted to give you a brief update on where we're at. You go to the next slide there. So Sea Engineering has completed a lot of their geotechnical surveys, the further offshore marine biological surveys and the sand site surveys. They've identified a big patch of sand, like 65,000 cubic yards of sand that they think are accessible if a decision were to be to bring sand from offshore back onto the beach. And the sand right now is a very close match to what's on the beach. It really looks like it's the beach sand that's sitting out there in the ocean. They're still pending some of their the alternatives assessment, some of the closer inshore. The weather has not been very amenable to getting a lot of the in-water work done. So looking at the marine biological surveys and really integrating some of the wave modeling that they've done into the engineering potential designs that they are suggesting. But probably the more interesting thing than the actual technical and engineering is the community outreach part. And go to the next slide, Diane. Yeah, so if you remember, we decided to keep the community engagement part within DLNR, the Climate Commission, Sea Grant to do the community outreach. And our entire goal is really for any of the alternatives that are presented to have been vetted through and have weigh in from the community before they get presented back, so that we're not in that position where all of this work has been done and you go out and the community's like, well, you already did it. So there might be things that they don't like that are in Sea Engineering's report, but that doesn't mean that's what we're actually going to take back out to them. So to that end, we've done quite a bit of outreach. We've done a series of 3 different beach days where we went out and surveyed people on the beach, just sat there both during the weekdays and on the weekends to talk with folks who are out there using the beach park. Distributed surveys, have been to 3 Honolulu Community Association meetings and some Ha'ula Community Association meetings, did a presentation at the Ko'olauloa Neighborhood Board, kind of as a kickoff last fall to start the engagement with people. And the thing that I'm excited about, that's really tiny writing up there. The thing I'm really excited about is the Honolulu Community Association is really excited that we're there, right? That anyone's there to work in that park up there, and asked me when I was there in the early summer and talking about the timeline, because the report is due to us in March of this coming, 2024. And then when you build off of that, you're starting to look at 343 timelines and permitting timelines. And they asked, like, was there something we can do now? So kind of as a sideline part of this overall project, we engaged with our dune restoration specialist from Sea Grant and the City Department of Parks and Recreation to really go out there and look at where there might be places in the park that we can do a community-led effort to do replantings and some dune restoration work. And so actually next Tuesday, we'll be up at the Community Association meeting again, presenting them with 11 different locations in the park where they can choose from that would have the least amount of impact on park use. And we've identified a source to buy some dune plants and to put together a community work day to go out and do community-led restoration work in the park. And
that's like the next step in this, and it may or may not, the plants might take, they might not, we don't really know, there's not a whole lot of sand in the system there, but it's something that people can do to get engaged. And we've also engaged with Parks and Rec, for the Community Association is considering being part of the Adopt a Parks program, so that they can really have a lot of ownership over any of the work that's done in the park there. So, this is more on the adaptation side of climate adaptation and looking at what we can do to protect the highway there, also to restore this beach resource to the local community, which is largely used by the local community up there, and really engaging community from the front end, from really far out before anything can be done on the ground, to make sure that it's guided by the principles of what the local park users there want to see. That's what
Thank you.
And I also wanted to tell you guys one other thing real quick, but unfortunately Ed left, because I thought it was really interesting that DOT and DOE were sitting right there, because sort of Climate Commission related and not, we're actually going to Ka'ava School next Wednesday to talk about coastal erosion and talk about the things as the students are seeing it right there in front of their school, to talk about why that's happening, what the science is behind it, and what can be done to help with it. So kind of getting in on the really early end for the young kids. So sea level rise science.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Members, any questions for Amy on the survey? I have one.
Yes.
Having identified a source of potentially compatible offshore sand, that would because this is a public beach park, it would require a public investment to re-nourish the sand there. This is a county or a state beach park?
It's a county beach park.
County beach park. So it would need county involvement to decide on, or is it the nearshore waters or state, but the beach itself is county, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's county and state jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's why we did pull in Parks and Rec as well in this process overall, to make sure that we have them on board from the beginning.
Okay. And this will tell them that there's a technically feasible option if and when they. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Leah, more on
Yeah.
the update?
We're gonna kick it off to Trinity.
Yes, hello, I'm Trinity. I'm the Clean and Affordable Transportation Choices Specialist. One of the Vistas, and I was in charge of kind of collecting that data for parking inventory. And so this is just an update of where we're at so far. We have done 146 parking lots. We have counted 16,302 stalls. 607 of those were handicap stalls. 38 of those were carpool stalls, 11 were EV parking stalls, and 203 were bike parking racks. We still have a remainder of 253. However, I have reached out to some universities and colleges, and they've been very helpful in sending me information, so I don't have to go out and count all of that, as well as the vistas. So that's where we're at right now.
Wow.
The reason why this is just very important is that I like to think of mobility hubs as being a mall, but it's just a bunch of transportation meeting together. And I feel like it's very helpful, and it kind of ties into equity in a way where a lot of active and shared transportation is equitable, because it is a low cost to free cost to be able to have that autonomy to move around and to get to where you need to go. So that enters mobility hubs, which is a place where people can come together and they can have access to these transportation sources. I think the most important part is that mobility hubs can be influenced and created specifically for the community that needs it, and by the organizations and what they believe needs to be in it. So I feel like mobility hubs sometimes can seem like a really big thing, and it is, but I think it could be very impactful for those who are in disadvantaged communities.
And then lastly, these are just some of the elements that mobility hubs are tying into. That is transit and trip taking, whether it is passenger pickup, car share, bus shuttle,
as well as parking and charging. This is good for the bike parking. So if someone wants to park their bike and then they need to go where they need to go to or transfer to another bus, this could be very helpful, as well as access and amenities. So we can create a community space if we feel as though that is what the community need, or it can be maybe like restrooms with their station, and it's like a lot of a long wait in that area. So it's just the idea of kind of looking at mobility hubs as a way to bring equity into our communities, as well as seeing the importance of transportation and how it needs to be more reliable.
Right. I have a couple of questions.
Oh, yes.
So the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development has a transit-oriented development branch. And we've been working with all 4 counties and state agencies to develop transit hubs and, transit corridors on Oahu primarily, and mixed-use communities around them, so that those residents would have transportation choices. Have you been introduced to any of our TOD folks?
Yes, so I believe throughout this process, we've also been talking to them just to try to correlate to make sure we're not looking at the same places and kind of communicating that. So yes, we are.
Great, that's wonderful. Thank you. That by the way, that cuts, a silo out of the picture.
That's right, coordination.
Terrific. Thank you. Any other questions, members? Okay, Leah, on to.
So our meeting schedule, this is kind of a who's together. I haven't actually talked to co-chairs. I'm gonna send this out in email. Let's figure this out at a later date. And then what I also just wanted to realize, unfortunately, this is our last meeting that we have some of our AmeriCorps Vistas. So we're going to be losing Kira, our tech specialist here, Trinity, our transportation specialist, and Dante over here, as well as a few others, because they've already been with us for a year. How quickly time flies. So if we just give them a round of applause.
Thank you for your good work.
And then, okay.
Oh, thank you, Leah.
Thank you, Leah.
Okay.
4 o'clock, wow.
Well, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, even though we don't have to meet about it.
Have you ever had someone oppose?
Never.
Definitely time for discussion.
You may leave now.
We're gonna end the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.